The sun struck the sand hard enough to make it glare, a pale gold sheet laid over the courtyard like a challenge. Oberyn Martell felt the heat through the soles of his boots, through the bronze scales at his chest, through the thin leather at his palms. He let the crowd have its roar. He let it wash around him and break against him like surf. Noise could turn men stupid. Noise could turn men brave, could turn a spear into a mistake. He did not come here to make mistakes. Gregor Clegane stood opposite, all black iron and slaughter, breathing like a bull behind the bars of his great helm. The mountain was so large the sand looked mean beneath him, as if it resented bearing that weight. In the first heartbeat of stillness, Oberyn Martell saw what he had always seen, the terrible simplicity of the man. There would be no feint worth naming, no cleverness, only forward and down and through. Oberyn Martell raised his spear, testing the balance. The shaft was ashwood, smooth where his hands had polished it, rough where he wanted bite. The head was narrow and wicked. He had watched the smith set it and had watched his own hand coat it with a dark sheen that caught no light. Poison was a language all its own. It spoke quietly and never stopped speaking. He did not rely on it, reliance was a trap, but he did not insult it either. Across the sand, Gregor Clegane moved first, a ponderous step that promised the rest. His sword came up, too big for any sane man, and the crowd pulled in a single breath as if the courtyard itself had lungs. Oberyn Martell gave him space. He slid to his left, cloak snapping, spear tip low, and let Gregor Clegane commit. The mountain came on with the same certainty he had brought to burning villages and broken women, certainty that the world would yield. Oberyn Martell watched the angle of the blade, the shift of plated shoulders, the tiny betrayals in the flex of the knees. He let the sword swing, and when it did, he was already gone, sand hissing under his boots. The first strike was not to kill. Killing was easy, if that was all you wanted. The first strike was to write the rules. His spear snapped out and bit into the back of Gregor Clegane's knee where steel plates met, where leather gave. A neat puncture, a gush of dark blood. Gregor Clegane snarled, the sound muffled but unmistakable, and staggered. Not enough to fall, but enough to learn that he could be moved. The mountain turned, furious, sweeping his sword in a murderous arc meant to cut Oberyn Martell in half. The blade tore air and sunlight and missed flesh by an arm's length. Oberyn Martell's shield caught the tail of it with a crack that shuddered up his bones. He let the force spin him, used it, and his spear was there again, finding the forearm, the inside, where the plates overlapped and the flesh was soft. Gregor Clegane bellowed. He charged. The crowd's noise changed then, from anticipation to panic. Men rose from benches. Women clutched at throats. Oberyn Martell heard the scrape of armor as Kingsguard shifted on the platform. He did not look up, but he knew where they were. He knew where Tywin Lannister sat, still as carved granite, and where Cersei Lannister leaned forward with her mouth half open, as if hatred needed air. He knew where Tyrion Lannister knelt in chains near the sand, small as a child among giants, watching with eyes that did not blink. Gregor Clegane's rush was meant to end everything at once. Crush, grab, tear. Oberyn Martell did not let it become a wrestling match. He danced backward, always at the edge of reach, spear flicking like a serpent's tongue. He struck again, higher, into the ribs through a gap when Gregor Clegane's arm lifted to swing, and felt the point scrape bone. Poison entered blood. Blood remembered. The mountain steps began to sound different. Not slower, Gregor Clegane had too much brute will for that, but less sure, as if the sand had turned treacherous under him. His swings grew wilder, his breathing harsher. He was losing measure. Oberyn Martell did not smile. Smiling was for victory. This was work. Gregor Clegane overreached on a downward chop, trying to pin Oberyn Martell's spear to the ground. Oberyn Martell let the shaft slide, surrendered a handspan, and the blade buried itself in sand with a dull, hungry thud. In that instant, Oberyn Martell stepped in, not close enough for a grab, never that, but close enough to make the world narrow to the slit of the great helm. His spear drove forward, straight as an oath, and struck the throat where iron met leather. The point did not find the clean path he wanted. Gregor Clegane twisted, and the spear skated, tearing instead of piercing. Gregor Clegane howled and flung his sword free of the sand, swinging blind. Oberyn Martell was already away. He had what he needed. He had the mountain's rage. He had the mountain's blood. He turned the circle tighter, forcing Gregor Clegane to pivot on a ruined leg. One more bite to the hamstring, and the great body lurched. One more to the belly, where a strap gap offered a whisper of flesh, and Gregor Clegane's breath came out wet. The mountain went down to one knee, then tried to rise, then went down again, the sand swallowing his weight like quicksand. Oberyn Martell stopped just beyond reach. He planted the butt of his spear in the sand, steady as a mast. The courtyard held its breath. "Gregor Clegane," Oberyn Martell called, his voice carrying cleanly over the hush. "You know why I came." The mountain's helm turned toward him. Behind the bars, something moved that might have been eyes or might have been only darkness. "You raped Elia Martell," Oberyn Martell said, and the name tasted like iron in his mouth. "You murdered her children. You!" Gregor Clegane's hands clawed at the sand, trying to pull himself forward. He could not. His legs betrayed him. His blood betrayed him. The poison spoke inside him with patient cruelty. Oberyn Martell lifted the spear tip and aimed it at the slit of the helm. He did not step closer. He did not offer his teeth to a beast. "Say it," Oberyn Martell demanded, and the words were not for the mountain alone. They were for Tywin Lannister above. They were for every lord who had ever let convenient silence pass for peace. "Say her name." For a moment, there was only the scrape of Gregor Clegane's breath against steel. Then, from within the helm, a voice came out like gravel dragged over bone. "I killed her." The sound of it, even muffled, struck the courtyard like a thrown stone. Somewhere a woman sobbed. Somewhere a man laughed, sharp, unbelieving. "I raped her," Gregor Clegane said, and the confession rolled out without shame, only rage, as if the words themselves were another blow. "I smashed her head in." Oberyn Martell's spear moved like lightning. The point drove through the eye slit before Gregor Clegane could spit the next syllable, and the mountain's body jerked, huge and sudden, as if the sky had punched him. Oberyn Martell twisted the shaft and pulled free in the same breath. Blood ran down the black helm in a bright line. Gregor Clegane toppled forward, face first into the sand, and did not rise. For a heartbeat, the world was silent. Then the courtyard exploded. The roar came late, as if the crowd had to be taught that the mountain could die. It broke in waves, shouts, screams, the pounding of hands on wood and stone, until the air itself felt thick with it. Oberyn Martell stood where he was, spear angled down, letting the sound crash over him without taking him. He looked once at Gregor Clegane's body. Even dead, the man looked like an insult, a mound of iron and cruelty the world had finally decided to bury. Oberyn Martell's chest tightened, not with joy, joy would have been too clean, but with something closer to relief, edged with a fresh and bitter grief. Elia Martell's name had been spoken aloud in this place at last. It would never be enough, but it mattered. "Enough?" a voice boomed, and the command cut through the noise like a blade. Tywin Lannister did not stand. He did not need to. The word had weight because it came from the man who had taught this city what weight was. The crowd quieted reluctantly, the way dogs quiet when their master lifts a hand. The hand of the king leaned forward on the platform, his green eyes cold as river stones. "The gods have made their judgment," Tywin Lannister said. "Tyrion Lannister is acquitted of the charges laid against him." There was a second roar, different from the first, less bloodthirsty, more astonished. A man could die and a man could live, and the whole realm could tip on the point of a spear. Tyrion Lannister's head jerked up as if yanked by a string. The chains at his wrists rattled when his hands trembled. Oberyn Martell saw the dwarf's throat work. For an instant, Tyrion Lannister looked like a man who did not know whether to laugh or sob, whether freedom was a gift or a trap. "Release him," Tywin Lannister ordered. Ser Meryn Trant hesitated only long enough to look towards Cersei Lannister, and Cersei Lannister's stare could have curdled milk. But the order had been spoken. Steel could not argue with steel. Kingsguard moved down into the sand. The keys came out. The iron lock gave with a stubborn click. When the manacles fell away, Tyrion Lannister's wrists were raw and red beneath them, the skin angry as if it had grown teeth. He did not stand at once. He stared at his freed hands, as though he expected them to vanish. "Get him out of here," Cersei Lannister hissed. Too low for the crowd, but not too low for the men nearest her. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright with a wet kind of rage. Before he slithers away, Oberyn Martell's gaze slid up the platform and found her. He let her see him look, let her feel for a heartbeat how it was to be measured and found wanting. Her lips peeled back from her teeth. "Prince Oberyn," Tywin Lannister said, and in the title there was courtesy like a knife with a polished hilt. "You have done what you came to do." Oberyn Martell's spear tip drifted, leaving a thin line in the sand. He thought of Elia Martell's hair, black and soft, caught in the sun at Sunspear. He thought of how she had laughed, at his jokes when they were children, how her laughter had changed after she was sent away, married to a prince who would never love her the way she deserved. He thought of the last letter she had written him, the ink hurried, the words hopeful in the way of people who still believed in safety. He looked back at Tywin Lannister. "I have done what I came to do," Oberyn Martell said, and his voice carried again, clear as a bell. "And what you came to do has been done as well." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Men leaned toward one another. Women covered mouths. Even those who did not know the history could taste the venom in the air. Tywin Lannister's eyes narrowed a fraction. "I do not understand you." Oberyn Martell lifted the spear, and the blood on it flashed darkly in the sun. "You understand perfectly," he said. Gregor Clegane spoke with his dying breath. He did not speak only for himself. Cersei Lannister stood then, the skirt of her gown snapping like a banner in a sudden wind. "You have your spectacle," she shouted down, unable to keep her voice from cracking. "Take it and go back to your deserts." Oberyn Martell did not look away from Tywin Lannister. "I will go back," he said softly. "When the debt is paid." The hand's face did not change, but Oberyn Martell saw something tighten in him, as subtle as a drawn string. Tywin Lannister had always ruled by making other men feel small. Now, in front of the realm, Oberyn Martell had made him feel, if not small, then watched. "Prince Oberyn," Tywin Lannister said, each word placed like a stone. "This is neither the time nor the place." "There is no time and place for truth in King's Landing," Oberyn Martell replied, and for the first time a smile touched his mouth. It was not warm. "That is why it must be spoken in the places you cannot control." He turned away at last, and the crowd parted as he walked off the sand, leaving Gregor Clegane's corpse behind like a broken monument. He did not glance at Tyrion Lannister, but he felt the dwarf's eyes on his back, heavy, questioning, newly alive. Above, Tywin Lannister watched him go without blinking, as if staring long enough could turn a man into stone. Inside the Red Keep, the air changed. The sun's brutality was replaced by torchlight and cold stone, by the smell of smoke and damp mortar. The cheering from the courtyard fell away behind them, muffled by walls built to keep out more than weather. Tyrion Lannister walked as though he expected a hand to clap iron back around his wrists. Two guards hemmed him in, not quite escort and not quite captor. Their hands stayed near their sword hilts without touching. They watched him the way men watched a spark near a powder keg. Oberyn Martell paced beside Tyrion Lannister with the easy stride of someone who had never learned to hurry for anyone. His armor had been stripped away, replaced by a long tunic the color of sun-baked sand, and a light cloak thrown carelessly over one shoulder. Only the spear remained in his hand for a time, until a turn in the corridor forced him to surrender it to a waiting Dornishman. He did so without protest, but Tyrion Lannister saw the moment his fingers left the shaft, saw how his shoulders shifted, as if part of him remained braced for battle. Ellaria Sand followed close, her gaze moving over the guards with quiet disdain. In her eyes there was the calm of a woman who had lived among vipers long enough to know which ones struck only when frightened. They reached a small antechamber with a brazier burning low. The guards halted. One cleared his throat. "My lord." "I am no one's lord," Tyrion Lannister said, hoarse, and surprised himself with the bitterness in it. Oberyn Martell turned his head slightly. The guard's eyes flicked to him, measuring. Oberyn Martell measured back and smiled. The guards retreated without needing further instruction, leaving the three of them alone. For a moment Tyrion Lannister did not speak. He stood with his hands open, flexing his fingers as if testing whether they belonged to him. The silence felt strange after the arena's roar, like stepping off a cliff and finding air where you expected stone. "You live," Oberyn Martell said at last. "I noticed," Tyrion Lannister replied. His mouth twitched, trying for wit and failing. "I am told it is because of you." Oberyn Martell's eyes were dark and bright. "Because of me," he agreed, as if stating the weather. Tyrion Lannister studied him. Up close, there was a fine sheen of sweat at Oberyn Martell's hairline, and a smear of sand on his cheekbone. There was also something else, a stillness held tight beneath charm, like a blade wrapped in silk. "You could have died," Tyrion Lannister said. "Yes," Oberyn Martell replied, "and you could have died, and yet we did not. Consider it proof that the gods enjoy surprises." Elia Sand's hand settled on Oberyn Martell's arm, fingers light. "Do not talk as if you won a game," she murmured. "You fought Gregor Clegane." Oberyn Martell covered her hand with his own. "I fought a man," he said gently. "A very large man with a very small soul." Tyrion Lannister swallowed. "He said it," he whispered, and the words tasted like ash. "He said about Princess Elia Martell." Oberyn Martell's smile vanished. For an instant his face looked carved, as if grief had finally found a place to sit. "He did," Oberyn Martell said, "before he died. And you will use it," Tyrion Lannister said. "I will use everything," Oberyn Martell replied. Tyrion Lannister's laugh came out thin. "Even me." Oberyn Martell's gaze sharpened. "Especially you," he said, and there was no mockery in it. "You know your father. Tywin Lannister hides behind law when law serves him, behind steel when steel serves him, behind gold when gold serves him. You are his son. You have watched him do it." Tyrion Lannister felt the old, familiar heat of resentment rise in him like bile. He had watched, yes. He had been the wall Tywin Lannister threw stones at to see if they would crack. He had been the joke Tywin Lannister refused to laugh at, the shame Tywin Lannister pretended was not his. "What do you want?" Tyrion Lannister asked. Oberyn Martell stepped closer, not threatening, but intent. "I want him to answer," he said. "Not his dogs, not his bannermen, not the convenient ghosts of war. Tywin Lannister." Tyrion Lannister shook his head once, slowly. "He will not," he said. "He will deny, and if forced, he will name a champion. He will let another man bleed for him and call it justice. Then we will make his champion useless," Oberyn Martell said. "Or we will make the cost of hiding too high." Tyrion Lannister looked down at his hands again. He thought of the crowd, of the way they had cheered Oberyn Martell and then cheered his acquittal as if justice were a feast they could attend. He thought of Cersei Lannister's eyes, bright with hatred. He thought of Tywin Lannister's voice, calm as a blade sliding into a sheath. "You are in the lion's den," Tyrion Lannister warned. "You have killed the lion's favorite monster. Now you are waving bloody meat." Oberyn Martell's mouth curved. "I have lived among worse beasts," he said, "and I have learned how to make them bite the hand that feeds them." As if summoned by the words, a soft rustle came from the doorway. Varys stood there, hands folded, his powdered face serene. He had not entered like a man with permission. He had entered like a rumor. "My lords," Varys said sweetly, "how delightful to find you both alive." The small council chamber smelled of wax and old parchment, of ink and impatience. Candles crowded the table like silent listeners. The map of Westeros lay spread beneath them, rivers and mountains drawn in neat lines that never showed mud or blood. Tywin Lannister sat at the head of it all, as if the chair had been built around him. He wore crimson so deep it was almost black in the candlelight, and a chain of office that glimmered like a promise. His hands were steady. His face was composed in the way of a man who believed composition was the same as control. Kevan Lannister stood behind him, a quiet shadow with honest eyes. Grand Maester Pycelle fussed over a stack of papers, muttering about precedent and propriety. Varys lounged with practiced softness, his smile a polite mask. Mace Tyrell sat with the confidence of a man who believed he belonged everywhere. The door opened. Oberyn Martell entered without bowing. He did not swagger, he did not need to. The air shifted around him as if the room recognized a new kind of danger. 2 Dornish guards followed, their spears grounded politely, and Elia sand drifted behind like a dark ribbon. Tywin Lannister's gaze did not leave Oberyn Martell. "Prince Oberyn," he said, "you have been given chambers and the hospitality owed to your rank. You have also been given more spectacle than most men earn in a lifetime. What do you want now?" Oberyn Martell walked to the table and placed his hands upon it, palms down, as if claiming a piece of the map. "Justice," he said simply. Grand Maester Pycelle made a distressed noise. "My prince, justice has been served." "The trial." "Not that trial," Oberyn Martell cut in, and his eyes flicked once to Varys, then to Mace Tyrell, then back to Tywin Lannister. "Not for Tyrion Lannister. Not for King Joffrey Baratheon. For Princess Elia Martell." A silence fell that felt older than the candles. Mace Tyrell shifted, the jewel on his finger catching light. Kevan Lannister's jaw tightened. Tywin Lannister's expression did not change. "Princess Elia Martell died in a war," he said. "A war that ended nearly 2 decades ago. It is not the concern of this council." "It became the concern of this council when Gregor Clegane spoke her name with his dying breath," Oberyn Martell replied. "He confessed to rape and murder before the court and the realm. He confessed to the slaughter of her children. And he did not act alone." Grand Maester Pycelle's lips trembled. "Confessions made in extremis are unreliable," he began, eager to offer the comfort of technicality. Oberyn Martell's gaze snapped to him, sharp as a whip. "Unreliable," he echoed softly. "Is that what we call truth when it is inconvenient?" Varys raised a hand delicately. "Surely no one here disputes that what happened to Princess Elia Martell was regrettable," he offered, voice as smooth as cream. "The realm mourned. The realm forgot," Oberyn Martell said. Tywin Lannister leaned back. The chair creaked. Under him, the only sign of movement. "You are accusing me," he said. "It was not a question." "I am naming you," Oberyn Martell replied. "You gave the order or you gave the leash. Either way, the blood leads to you." Mace Tyrell cleared his throat. "Now, my prince, these are grave words," he said, attempting warmth and finding only nerves. "Lord Tywin Lannister served as hand under King Aerys Targaryen long ago, and later under King Robert Baratheon, and now under King Tommen Baratheon. To accuse a hand is to accuse a realm's hypocrisy," Oberyn Martell finished. "Yes, that is why it matters." Kevan Lannister's voice was quiet, but it carried. "What do you seek?" he asked. "Gold? An apology? Hostages returned?" "Dorne has always been proud." Oberyn Martell turned slightly, and for a moment the candlelight caught the edge of something in his eyes that was not pride but pain. "I seek what you would seek," he said. "If your sister had been raped and murdered and your nieces butchered in their bed." Kevan Lannister did not flinch, but his gaze dropped. He had daughters. He understood the shape of that grief. Tywin Lannister watched Oberyn Martell as one watches a man holding a torch in a dry field. "You presume much," he said. "I presume nothing," Oberyn Martell replied. "Yakuze." And in this kingdom, when accusation meets denial and the truth is strangled by power, there is an ancient remedy. Grand Maester Pycelle's eyes widened. Trial by combat. Trial by combat, Oberyn Martell confirmed. Let the gods decide between House Martell and Tywin Lannister. The candles seemed to burn lower. Even Mace Tyrell stopped shifting. Tywin Lannister's gaze held steady. If I am accused, I may name a champion, he said, the words delivered like law carved into stone. Oberyn Martell's smile returned, thin as a blade. Name one, he said, and let all the realm see how the Lion of Lannister hides behind another man's shield. Tywin Lannister's eyes narrowed. You mistake restraint for fear. Oberyn Martell leaned closer across the map. No, he said softly. I mistake your certainty for invincibility, and that is a mistake I intend to correct. Varys's smile deepened, almost imperceptible. A storm had found its first thunder, and the spider loved the sound. Cersei Lannister's chambers were rich enough to smother sound. Thick carpets swallowed footsteps. Heavy drapes smothered sunlight until the room lived in perpetual dusk. Even the air seemed reluctant, scented with rose oil and something sharper beneath it, the metallic hint of fear. She paced like a caged lioness, the hem of her gown whispering against the floor. Her fingers trembled. Rage did that. It made the body betray the mind. She hated betrayal. On the table lay a piece of blackened steel. One of Gregor Clegane's plates, dragged back from the courtyard as if salvaging a trophy could undo the day. Sand clung to the seams. A dark smear stained the edge where blood had dried. He was supposed to die, Cersei Lannister said, and the words were not an order now but an accusation hurled at the world. Both of them, the dwarf and the Dornishman, they were supposed to die. Qyburn stood as he always did, calm, attentive, unfussed by royal tempers. His hands were clean. That cleanliness made him more unsettling than any butcher. Gregor Clegane was unusually difficult to kill, Qyburn said mildly, as if discussing a stubborn infection. Cersei Lannister whirled on him. And yet he is dead, she snapped. Dead on his face in the sand while the small folk cheered. While my father sat there and pretended it meant nothing. Qyburn inclined his head. The small folk cheer many things, he murmured. They cheered your son at his wedding. They cheered the dwarf's trial. They cheered today. Their loyalty is a candle flame. Cersei Lannister's nails bit her palm. Do not soothe me, she said. Fix it. Qyburn opened a small wooden box and lifted it so she could see within. Vials nested there like eggs. Clear glass, different shades of liquid, some pale, some dark. He had the air of a man offering jewelry. The Prince Oberyn Martell has expertise in venoms, Qyburn said. Poison may not be prudent. Prudent? Cersei Lannister echoed, and laughed without humor. Prudence is what brought us to this. Prudence is my father's favorite word. Prudence is why the Dornish are still alive to spit in our faces. Qyburn's eyes remained on her, unblinking. There are other methods, he said. Accidents, blades in shadow, a fall from a stair, fire. You have men who can be persuaded. Cersei Lannister thought of the Kettleblacks, of their eager eyes and cheap loyalty. She thought of gold and promises and the hunger in men who believed the Queen Mother could make them great. I want it clean, she said, though she did not mean clean in the way Qyburn did. I want it quiet. I want him dead before he has time to infect the city with his little stories. And Lord Tyrion Lannister? Qyburn asked, as if the name were simply another ingredient. Cersei Lannister's throat tightened. Tyrion Lannister alive was a knife left on the floor. Inevitable, waiting. He should never have been born, she said, and for a moment the room felt colder. If my father will not kill him, then I will. Qyburn's hands folded. If you attempt to strike openly, he cautioned. Prince Oberyn Martell may provoke Dorne. Princess Myrcella Baratheon is in Sunspear. The Dornish have a taste for reciprocity. Cersei Lannister's eyes flashed. Myrcella, sweet, soft Myrcella, with her innocent smile and her gentle hands. Cersei Lannister's love for her children was fierce, possessive, almost holy. The thought of Dornish hands on her daughter's throat made her vision blur with red. "They would not dare," she said, but the words sounded like prayer. "They might," Qyburn said, "not out of madness, out of calculation. Prince Oberyn Martell is not only a fighter. He is a spark. Sparks do not threaten. They ignite." Cersei Lannister reached for her goblet, found it half full, and crushed it in her grip. The metal buckled with a soft crunch. Wine spilled through her fingers, dark and sticky, and dripped onto the carpet like blood. "Then we smother him," she whispered, voice trembling with fury, "before he sets the whole castle on fire." Qyburn's gaze flicked to the stained carpet and back. "As you command," he said softly. When he left, the candle flame did not flicker. Cersei Lannister stood alone among her riches and felt, for the first time in years, that the walls of the Red Keep were not protection but a tomb waiting to be sealed. Beyond the drapes, the city murmured. Somewhere in those murmurs, Prince Oberyn Martell's name was being spoken like a toast, and somewhere else, Tyrion Lannister was breathing free air again. Cersei Lannister pressed her bloody wine fingers to the lion tapestry and left a dark smear across its stitched mane. "Mine," she whispered, though she did not know whether she meant the castle, the city, or the future. Oberyn Martell's chambers in the Red Keep were generous in the way of gifts meant to buy silence. A man could forget himself in soft linens and fine wine, could pretend the stone beneath the tapestries did not remember screams from the Mad King's time. Oberyn Martell did not forget anything. He sat at a table near the balcony, a low lamp casting honey-colored light over parchment. Beyond the open shutters, the city lay sprawled and restless, a beast of rooftops and chimney smoke. Far off, bells rang for evening prayer, their sound softened by distance until it seemed like the city was trying to soothe itself. Oberyn Martell dipped his quill and wrote carefully, each stroke deliberate. His hand did not shake. It had shaken once, long ago, when he had received the first word of what had been done to Elia Martell. He remembered the sensation, how rage had made his fingers clumsy, how grief had made his breath ragged. He had been younger then, full of the belief that speed was strength. He had learned since. Elia Sand watched him from the bench, her legs folded beneath her. Her gaze moved from his face to the wax seal waiting beside the lamp, to the small vial set near his dagger. The vial held nothing now. It had held death earlier. "You will send it tonight," Elia Sand said quietly. Oberyn Martell did not look up. "Doran Martell will want to know what happened," he replied. Elia Sand's mouth tightened. "He will want to know why you are still in King's Landing." Oberyn Martell paused then. The quill hovered. In the lamplight, his eyes looked almost black. "Because Gregor Clegane was only the blade," he said, "and I have never been satisfied with killing blades." Elia Sand rose and crossed to him. She stood behind his shoulder, reading the first lines without touching. Doran Martell's name sat on the parchment like a weight. Prince of Dorne, his brother, the careful one. "Doran Martell will tell you to be cautious," Elia Sand murmured. Oberyn Martell's lips twitched. "Doran Martell tells me that every time I breathe. And will you listen?" Oberyn Martell set the quill down. The ink glistened wetly, like fresh blood in lamplight. He turned his head just enough to see Elia Sand's face. She was beautiful in a way that made men careless. That beauty had never made Oberyn Martell careless, but it had made him kinder than he would have been otherwise. "I listened today," he said, and there was a strange softness in his voice. "Gregor Clegane baited me as he always would. He reached for me as he always would, and I did not give him my skull." Elia Sand's eyes flickered. She had seen the duel. She had seen the way the crowd leaned in when Oberyn Martell demanded confession, hungry for drama, hungry for tragedy. She had seen the moment when his foot shifted just a fraction, and how quickly he corrected it. She knew, as well as he did, how close the world had come to repeating itself. Another Martell broken in King's Landing, another grief delivered to Sunspear in a box. "You controlled yourself," she said. I remembered Elia Martell, Oberyn Martell answered. And I remembered that my death would be a gift to Tywin Lannister. Elia Sand's hand tightened. So you will live, she whispered, and there was plea in it. Live and take your vengeance another way. Oberyn Martell leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. Vengeance, justice, words that men used like armor, pretending they could not be cut through. He thought of the courtyard and the confession ringing in the air. He thought of Tywin Lannister's face, still as stone, and how that stillness had not been innocence. It had been calculation. Tywin Lannister believes he can outlast anything, Oberyn Martell said. He outlasted kings. He outlasted rebellion. He outlasted the screams of children. He believes time makes him right. Elia Sand said, Then do not give him time. Oberyn Martell's smile returned, thin and bright. That is the plan. He reached for the wax and warmed it over the lamp flame until it softened. He pressed his ring into it and lifted it away, leaving the sun and spear impression crisp and final. The seal was a promise, a declaration. A knock came at the door, soft but urgent. A Dornish guard entered, head bowed. Prince Oberyn Martell, he said. A man brought this. He held out a folded scrap of parchment, unsealed, as if whoever sent it trusted secrecy more than form. Oberyn Martell took it and unfolded it. The note was brief. The hand was neat. They whisper you will accuse Lord Tywin Lannister publicly. It read, If you do, the city will choose sides. Some will choose you. Some will choose your death. Choose your steps carefully. A friend. Elia Sand leaned in, reading over his shoulder. Varys, she guessed. Perhaps, Oberyn Martell said. He crumpled the note slowly, then smoothed it again, and placed it beside the lamp as if giving it a place among the things he would not forget. Let them whisper, he said. Whispers are how King's Landing admits its truths. Elia Sand searched his face. And what will you do tomorrow? Oberyn Martell's smile returned, thin and bright. Tomorrow, he said, I will force a lion into the open. The feast that night was meant to prove normality. King Tommen Baratheon's court required the illusion of steadiness the way a drowning man required air. So tables were laid, and wine poured, and musicians plucked at strings as if music could stitch together a realm. But the hall was full of eyes rather than laughter. Conversations formed and broke like soap bubbles. Names drifted from mouth to mouth. Gregor Clegane, Tyrion Lannister, Oberyn Martell, each spoken with a different flavor. Awe, disgust, glee. Marjorie Tyrell sat near the dais, her posture perfect, her smile gentle as a hand placed on a wound. She listened more than she spoke. Across from her, Olenna Tyrell wore her jewels like armor and her wrinkles like weapons. They will talk about it for years, Marjorie Tyrell murmured, voice low enough to be private. A monster slain in the king's own yard. Olenna Tyrell snorted. They talked about dragons for years too, she said. Talking rarely improves anything. Acting does. Marjorie Tyrell's smile did not falter. Prince Oberyn Martell will act, she said. He has already begun. Prince Oberyn Martell is a serpent, Olenna Tyrell replied. Serpents are useful when pointed at one's enemies, and inconvenient when they slither into one's bed. Marjorie Tyrell's eyes flicked toward the far end of the hall, where Tywin Lannister sat with an untouched cup, a man made of stillness amid the feast's noise. Cersei Lannister sat beside him, too bright, too brittle. King Tommen Baratheon looked small between them, like a candle between two stones. Lord Tywin Lannister does not like inconvenience, Marjorie Tyrell said. He does not like anything he cannot command, Olenna Tyrell replied, which is precisely why the gods have blessed us with a Dornishman. Marjorie Tyrell lowered her gaze, lashes shadowing her cheeks. If Lord Tywin Lannister falls, she said softly, who catches the crown? Olenna Tyrell's lips curved. Preferably us, she answered. A soft presence drifted beside them. Varys inclined his head, as though he had been summoned by the scent of ambition. "My ladies," he said, voice as warm as spiced wine, "you look radiant this evening." Olenna Tyrell eyed him as if he were a particularly clever rat. "And you look interested," she said. "Tell me, Spider, do you enjoy watching lions and vipers circle each other?" Varys's smile widened. "I enjoy peace," he said smoothly. Olenna Tyrell gave a short laugh. "Then you must be constantly disappointed." Marjorie Tyrell sipped her wine, eyes thoughtful. "Prince Oberyn Martell intends to accuse Lord Tywin Lannister," she said, not as gossip but as fact. "Do you think he can?" Varys's hands folded. "Prince Oberyn Martell has already done what many believed impossible," he replied. "He killed Gregor Clegane in open court and lived. That alone will embolden many who prefer to believe the powerful are protected by fate." "And Lord Tywin Lannister?" Marjorie Tyrell asked.
Varska.
Z drifted for a heartbeat toward the dais. "Lord Tywin Lannister has survived storms by making himself the house everyone else shelters under," he said. "When the house shakes, people do not always blame the storm. Sometimes they blame the builder." Olenna Tyrell leaned closer, jewelry glinting. "Speak plainly," she said. "Will Lord Tywin Lannister allow himself to be dragged into a trial like a common thief?" Varys's smile did not fade, but something in his eyes sharpened. "Lord Tywin Lannister will do what preserves House Lannister," he said. "And what preserves House Lannister may no longer be what preserves him." Marjorie Tyrell set her cup down carefully. "If Prince Oberyn Martell forces a trial," she said, "it weakens the Lannisters. It also risks tearing the alliance apart. The realm is already bleeding." Olenna Tyrell patted her hand. "The realm bleeds regardless," she said. "Better that it bleeds into our hands than onto our shoes." Across the hall, Mace Tyrell laughed too loudly at a jest no one else had the courage to ignore. Men watched him, calculating whether his laughter meant confidence or ignorance. Somewhere near the doors, a pair of Lannister guards whispered and glanced toward the corridors, where shadows moved. Varys's voice lowered, almost tender. "Whatever happens," he said, "I hope you will remember that King Tommen Baratheon is young. The realm will follow those who appear steady." Marjorie Tyrell's smile returned, soft and practiced. "Then I will be steady," she said. Olenna Tyrell's eyes flashed. "And I will be sharp," she added. Varys bowed and drifted away, leaving behind only the faint scent of perfume and the sense that the room had shifted by a degree. Marjorie Tyrell watched Tywin Lannister across the hall. He did not laugh. He did not drink. He did not speak much. He watched, and in his watching was the quiet certainty of a man who believed he could turn any feast into a battlefield and any battlefield into a ledger. For the first time, Marjorie Tyrell wondered if the ledger could be made to bleed. Morning brought ceremony, because ceremony was the crown's favorite disguise. The throne room filled slowly, the way a wound filled with blood. Lords arrived in their finery, swords kept sheathed by royal decree but never truly absent. Courtiers clustered like birds, craning to see, to hear, to carry stories away in their beaks. Gold cloaks lined the walls, their faces blank, their hands steady on spear shafts. King Tommen Baratheon sat on the dais beneath the Iron Throne's shadow, too small for the chair built for men who were meant to frighten. His feet did not touch the floor. His hands clutched the arms of the seat as if it might float away. Beside him, Cersei Lannister sat with her spine straight and her mouth tight, every inch the mother who refused to show the world her fear. Tywin Lannister stood to the king's right, the hand's pin catching torchlight like a cold star. Tyrion Lannister stood near the side, free but not quite unguarded. Two men lingered behind him at a respectful distance, their presence a reminder that acquittal did not mean welcome. Tyrion Lannister's eyes darted from face to face, measuring who looked at him with pity and who looked at him with knives behind their smiles. The doors opened, and Oberyn Martell entered. He wore red and gold this time, not Lannister crimson but Dornish heat, fabric that moved like flame when he walked. A sun and spear clasp held his cloak at the shoulder. Elia Sand followed him, face unreadable, eyes bright. Behind them, 2 Dornish guards halted at the threshold and remained there, spears grounded, an unmoving promise. A murmur ran through the hall. Oberyn Martell's name moved like wind through dry grass. Tywin Lannister did not move. "Prince Oberyn," he said, voice even. "You asked for audience." Oberyn Martell bowed, not to Tywin Lannister, but to King Tommen Baratheon. The gesture was correct. His correctness made it sharper. "Your Grace," Oberyn Martell said, "I come to ask for justice under your crown." King Tommen Baratheon's eyes widened slightly. He looked at Tywin Lannister, as children did when they did not know which answer was safe. Cersei Lannister's voice cut in. "Justice for what?" she demanded. "You have been indulged enough." Oberyn Martell's head turned toward her. "For Princess Elia Martell," he said, and the hall shifted as if someone had opened a door to winter. Cersei Lannister's lips curled. "That again," she spat. "Must Dorne always gnaw at old bones?" Oberyn Martell's smile held no warmth. "Old bones do not bleed," he said. "Mini do." Tywin Lannister lifted a hand slightly, and Cersei Lannister fell silent with effort. The small movement was a reminder. Even now he controlled her. Even now he controlled much. Oberyn Martell faced the dais again. "Gregor Clegane confessed in the courtyard," he said, voice carrying. "He confessed to rape and murder. He confessed to the slaughter of Princess Elia Martell's children. He did so before you, your grace. Before the court. Before the gods." A low rustle moved through the room. Men who had been present nodded faintly. Others leaned forward, hungry. "And I accuse," Oberyn Martell continued, "the man who unleashed him." Silence snapped tight. Tywin Lannister's gaze remained steady. "You accuse me," he said, calm as an executioner sharpening his blade. "I name Tywin Lannister," Oberyn Martell said, and his voice did not shake. "I name him responsible for what was done in the sack of King's Landing. I name him responsible for the death of Princess Elia Martell, for the death of her son and daughter. If he did not order it, he allowed it. If he did not allow it, he rewarded it. Either way, the blood leads to him." Cersei Lannister surged to her feet. "Lies!" she shouted. "You dare!" Olenna Tyrell's voice, thin but sharp, drifted from the crowd. "Hush, dear," she said, as if scolding a yapping dog. "We're all here to hear the daring." Mace Tyrell coughed, mortified. "Mother!" Olenna Tyrell waved a jeweled hand. "Sit," she said. He sat. Tywin Lannister did not glance at them. He did not need allies who spoke. He relied on allies who feared. "This accusation is," Grand Maester Pycelle began, but his words died when Oberyn Martell's gaze flicked his way. Pycelle swallowed and stared at his own hands. Tywin Lannister's voice cut through. "You have no proof," he said. "You have only the ravings of a dying brute and the bitterness of a grieving brother." Oberyn Martell's eyes flashed. "I have the truth," he said. "And in this realm, when truth is strangled by power, we have an ancient remedy." Tywin Lannister's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Trial by combat," he said, as if naming a distasteful necessity. "Yes," Oberyn Martell replied. "Trial by combat. Let the gods decide whether Tywin Lannister is innocent." King Tommen Baratheon's mouth opened. He looked helplessly at Tywin Lannister, at Cersei Lannister, at the sea of faces. The throne room waited, eager as a crowd at the edge of a cliff. Tywin Lannister bowed his head toward the king, the picture of loyal service. "Your Grace," he said, "if such a trial is granted, I will of course defend my honor. As is my right, I will name my champion." Oberyn Martell's smile sharpened. "Of course," he said, loud enough for the whole hall. "The lion names another to bleed for him." A murmur rose, dangerous and delighted. Tywin Lannister's eyes flicked, just once, across the crowd, gauging the temperature. This was how rebellions began. Not with swords, but with laughter at the wrong moment. Cersei Lannister hissed. Tommen. Oberyn Martell stepped closer, turning his body slightly so his voice aimed not only at the dais but at the room. If Tywin Lannister hides behind a champion, he said, Dorne will consider it confession. Dorne will withdraw its peace. Dorne will hold Princess Myrcella Baratheon as guest no longer, but as leverage. Cersei Lannister made a sound like a wounded animal. Jo, you would threaten my daughter. I would protect mine, Oberyn Martell said softly, and for a moment the hall saw the grief beneath the venom. Do not pretend you do not understand such love. Tywin Lannister's face remained carved, but something in his eyes hardened, like ice forming. The room had turned into a trap with velvet walls, and he could feel it. Enough, Tywin Lannister said, and his voice held the weight it had held in the courtyard. This is not a negotiation shouted in a throne room. It is, Oberyn Martell replied, unflinching. If you have spent your life making the throne room your battlefield, King Tommen Baratheon whispered, barely audible, I grant. He looked at Tywin Lannister, and the words rearranged themselves under that gaze. I grant a hearing. Tywin Lannister inclined his head. As you wish, your grace. Oberyn Martell smiled as if he had been handed a key. Then hear this, he said, voice ringing. I will meet Tywin Lannister in trial by combat, and if he cannot look me in the eye while he defends himself, then all the realm will know what he truly is. Tyrion Lannister watched from the side, heart pounding, and realized with a cold twist that he had been freed from one trial only to become an audience to another, one that might tear the realm in half. Tywin Lannister did not rage in public. Public rage was a weakness men could exploit. If Tywin Lannister ever raised his voice, it was because raising it served him. In the privacy of his chambers, he still did not rage. He removed the hand's chain with deliberate care and set it on the table as if it were a tool rather than a symbol. The metal caught the firelight and glowed briefly, like embers. Kevan Lannister watched him, his expression tight. This is madness, Kevan Lannister said quietly. He wants you to fight. He wants you humiliated. Tywin Lannister's fingers rested on the edge of the table. He wants me dead, Tywin Lannister corrected. Humiliation is merely the invitation. Kevan Lannister's gaze flicked to the armor laid out on the chair. It was not tournament finery. It was practical. Well-fitted plates, dark leather, a simple helm. You cannot, Kevan Lannister said. Not against him. Oberyn Martell is a viper, Tywin Lannister finished. Yes, I have been told. Kevan Lannister's mouth tightened. Then name a champion, he urged. That is your right. Tywin Lannister's eyes lifted. They were cold, focused. And let the realm laugh, Tywin Lannister said. Let them say the lion hides behind another man's shield. Let them say Dorne's threats made me blink. Let Cersei Lannister's enemies whisper that she can be frightened by holding her daughter hostage. Let Mace Tyrell begin imagining himself as Hand. Kevan Lannister flinched at the name. The Tyrells will take advantage regardless, he said. They always do. Tywin Lannister's lips thinned. They will, he agreed, which is why I will not give them an open door. The door did open then, hard, without courtesy. Cersei Lannister swept in like a storm, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with fury and fear. She stopped short when she saw the armor. No, she said, and the word was a plea wrapped in command. Father, no. You cannot let him force you into this. Tywin Lannister did not turn. He has already forced the crown into it, he said. The boy granted a hearing. Cersei Lannister's hands clenched at her sides. Tommen Baratheon is a child, she spat. He does not understand. He only does what you tell him. Tywin Lannister's gaze slid toward her at last. Then perhaps, he said, you should consider why he did not do what I told him today. Cersei Lannister froze, fury caught in her throat. She knew the answer. Everyone did. The throne room had laughed. The throne room had leaned forward like a hungry animal, and laughter was dangerous, could devour kings. "He threatened Myrcella," Cersei Lannister said, voice trembling. "He threatened my daughter. If you fight him and die." "If I do not fight," Tywin Lannister cut in, "they will threaten her again and again, until you learn that threats only work when they are answered with weakness." Cersei Lannister stepped closer, lowering her voice as if softness might succeed where rage failed. "You are the lastest strong thing we have," she whispered. "Jaime Lannister is gone. The Kingsguard are fools. The city is full of vipers. If you fall..." Tywin Lannister's expression did not soften. "If I fall," he said, "then you will learn what I have spent my life preventing. You will learn what it means to rule without fear." Cersei Lannister's eyes glistened. "I do rule with fear," she whispered. "I have always." Tywin Lannister's gaze sharpened. "No," he said, "you frighten people because you are frightened. That is not the same thing." Cersei Lannister recoiled as if struck. Kevan Lannister moved carefully between them, voice gentle. "There must be another way," he said. "A compromise. Gold to Dorne." Tywin Lannister's laugh was quiet and humorless. "Gold," he said. "Always you think gold buys everything. It buys swords. It buys silence. It does not buy absolution. And Oberyn Martell does not want payment. He wants a spectacle that ends with me bleeding." Cersei Lannister's voice rose again, desperate. "Then kill him first," she hissed. "Have him poisoned, stabbed, thrown from a window, anything. He is a guest in our castle. Accidents happen." Tywin Lannister's eyes narrowed. "Do you think he has not considered that?" he asked. "Do you think he walks unguarded? Do you think he has no friends? Killing him outside the law turns him into a martyr. Martyrs are worse than enemies. Enemies can be bought, broken, or killed. Martyrs multiply." Cersei Lannister's breath came fast. "Then what?" she demanded. "What will you do?" Tywin Lannister picked up the sword from the chair. He tested its weight in his hand, the way a man tested a decision. The blade caught the firelight and flashed. "I will meet him," Tywin Lannister said. Kevan Lannister's face tightened. Tywin Lannister's gaze did not waver. "I will meet him," he repeated. "Not because I enjoy it, not because I am foolish. Because the realm must learn again what happens when men attempt to claw at lions." Cersei Lannister stared at him, and for a moment she looked young again, a daughter watching her father become something mythic and terrifying. "He will kill you," she whispered. Tywin Lannister's mouth tightened. "Perhaps," he said, "and perhaps I will kill him. Either way, the lesson will be written in blood." He set the sword down with care. The sound of metal on wood seemed loud in the quiet room. Outside, somewhere in the castle, bells rang again. The city prayed. Tywin Lannister did not. He simply began to dress for war. Dawn cooled the stones of the Red Keep as if the castle had sweated out its fever in the night. The courtyard lay pale beneath a thin veil of morning mist, the sand freshly raked into neat lines that would not remain neat for long. Wooden barriers had been set. Gold cloaks stood with spears grounded, trying to keep order in a city that treated order like a rumor. The crowd came early. They always did when blood was promised. Some wore fine cloaks and jewels. Others wore patched tunics and hunger. All wore the same expression. That eager tension of people who believed another man's pain might make their own lives feel less fragile. Tyrion Lannister stood near the edge of the platform, not invited but not yet banished. His hands were hidden in his sleeves. His breath fogged in the cool air, and he watched the courtyard as if it were a cliff's edge. He had survived one trial by combat yesterday. Now he was about to witness another, and he did not know whether to pray for the viper or the lion. King Tommen Baratheon sat on the platform, bundled in a cloak too heavy for his small frame. His eyes moved constantly, darting between faces, seeking reassurance. Cersei Lannister sat rigid beside him, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Mace Tyrell lounged with uncomfortable pride, as though his presence itself were a claim. Olenna Tyrell sat like a statue carved from old, sharp stone, watching with the calm of someone who had seen enough men die to know that death was never polite. Varys stood near a pillar, hands folded, eyes bright with interest that he disguised as concern. Then Tywin Lannister entered. A hush fell. It was not reverence. It was recognition. Tywin Lannister walked into the sand with the measured steps of a man going to his own execution and daring the crowd to call it anything but duty. His armor fit well. He held a sword in his right hand and a plain shield in his left, neither ornate nor ceremonious. His face was set, his gaze forward. He stopped in the center of the raked sand. The morning light caught the edge of his helm and turned it briefly to gold. Oberyn Martell entered from the opposite side. He looked, Tyrion Lannister thought, like the answer to everything Tywin Lannister had ever believed about power. He wore lighter armor, built for speed rather than endurance, with Dornish colors woven through it like heat through air. His spear was in his hand, and the point glittered. Whether it carried poison now, no one could say. The possibility alone made men swallow. Oberyn Martell walked to the center and stopped a few paces from Tywin Lannister. Between them lay only sand and decades of blood. Tywin Lannister's voice carried in the morning quiet. "You have your spectacle," he said, almost the same words he had spoken in the council chamber. "Will it satisfy you when you return to Dorne?" Oberyn Martell's eyes did not leave him. "It will satisfy Elia Martell," he replied. "And if it does not, nothing will." Tywin Lannister's mouth tightened. "Elia Martell is dead," he said. "The dead do not judge." "They do," Oberyn Martell said softly. "They judge every time we pretend their deaths were necessary." A murmur ran through the crowd, quick and nervous. In that murmur, Tyrion Lannister heard the realm's heartbeat. Fast, eager, afraid. Cersei Lannister leaned toward King Tommen Baratheon, whispering fiercely. Tommen's face went paler. He lifted a hand, and the Master of Whisperers did not need to tell anyone what it meant. The herald stepped forward, voice loud, reciting the forms that turned violence into law. Tywin Lannister's gaze flicked up to the platform briefly, taking in his grandson, his daughter, the Tyrells, the watching court. Then it returned to Oberyn Martell, and in that gaze there was a simple acknowledgement. "This is what you have forced, and this is what I have accepted." Oberyn Martell shifted his grip on the spear. His stance was loose, ready, as if the sand beneath him were familiar ground. He did not look at the platform. He did not look at the crowd. He looked only at Tywin Lannister, as if the rest of the world had vanished. Tywin Lannister raised his sword a fraction. "Do you truly believe the gods care about old grievances?" he asked, voice low enough that only those closest might hear, yet somehow the morning carried it anyway. "Do you believe they will choose sides?" Oberyn Martell's smile was thin and bright. "No," he said. "I believe men choose, and I have chosen not to let you hide behind your name." For a moment, Tywin Lannister looked at him. Not at his weapon, not at his stance, but at his face, as if memorizing the man who had dared to drag the past into the sun. Then the herald's voice rang out the final words. The courtyard held its breath. Even the banners seemed to still. Tywin Lannister stepped forward. Oberyn Martell's spear tip lifted, steady as a pointing finger, and the realm, balanced on the edge of a blade, waited to see which kind of power would break first. The first sound was Tywin Lannister's boot on sand. It was almost nothing, an ordinary scrape, the kind a child might make in play, but in the hush of the courtyard it seemed to announce a verdict. The crowd leaned forward as one, bodies pressing against the wooden barriers, mouths half open as if the air itself had turned to bait. Tyrion Lannister felt his stomach not so tightly it seemed to climb into his throat. The day before, he had watched a man die and felt grateful. Now he watched his father advance into the same circle of law-made violence and felt something far less tidy. He had wanted Tywin Lannister punished more times than he could count, in flashes of drunken rage, in cold, quiet nights when he could not sleep for hearing his father's voice in his skull. He had not imagined the punishment would be this public, clean, sanctified by the crown, carried out by a foreign prince with a spear. Above him, Cersei Lannister's face was a white mask. Her eyes stayed fixed on the sand. Her lips moved soundlessly. Tyrion Lannister wondered if she was praying. He had never seen Cersei Lannister do anything without believing herself the god being addressed. King Tommen Baratheon's small hands clutched the arms of his chair. His gaze darted between Tywin Lannister and Oberyn Martell like a rabbit's eyes between two hawks. On the king's other side, Jaime Lannister stood in white plate and rigid stillness, as if his armor were the only thing keeping him upright. His golden hand, polished, gleaming, rested near his belt where his sword hung. He did not touch it. He did not move at all. Tywin Lannister raised his shield. His sword came up beside it, point angled slightly toward Oberyn Martell's heart. He held himself the way men did when they had drilled with steel since boyhood. Not loose with confidence like a sellsword, but precise, economical, built out of lessons a master-at-arms beat into noble sons. Oberyn Martell did not mirror him. The Dornish prince remained light on his feet, spear held at a slant, the butt end trailing a faint line in the sand. His stance was almost casual, shoulders loose, chin lifted. Only the spear tip betrayed him, steady as a star. The herald's last words fell away. In their place came the thin sound of wind over the walls, and then Tywin Lannister moved. He came in carefully at first, not charging, not attempting a heroic strike. His shield advanced like a door. His sword flicked once, testing distance the way he might test a new knife's edge. Oberyn Martell stepped to the side, cloak shifting, and the sword cut nothing but air. The spear answered, quick and sharp, darting toward Tywin Lannister's left thigh. Tywin Lannister caught it on his shield with a solid thud that traveled through wood and arm into shoulder. The force surprised Tyrion Lannister. Tywin Lannister was no young man, and yet he absorbed the blow without staggering. The crowd made a collective sound, impressed against its will. Oberyn Martell withdrew the spear as if it had touched fire. He circled, sand whispering under his boots. Tywin Lannister pivoted to keep him in front, sword always poised to punish any careless closeness. Still hiding behind something, Oberyn Martell called, voice clear. Even now. Tywin Lannister did not answer with words. He answered with steel. He stepped in suddenly, faster than his age promised, shield thrusting to jam the spear aside, sword slashing for Oberyn Martell's ribs. The move had the brutal logic of a man who understood he could not afford to be toyed with. Oberyn Martell snapped backward, spear rising to parry, the blade scraping along the shaft with a screech that made teeth hurt. The tip of Tywin Lannister's sword kissed Oberyn Martell's cloak and sliced cloth. A strip fluttered down onto the sand like a fallen banner. The crowd hissed with satisfaction. Oberyn Martell's eyes narrowed. For a heartbeat his smile flashed, bright, almost delighted. He had found the truth beneath the armor. Tywin Lannister was not a spectacle, not a trembling old lion waiting for the spear. Tywin Lannister was discipline. Tywin Lannister was will. Oberyn Martell danced away, spear flicking toward Tywin Lannister's hands. Tywin Lannister parried with shield and sword in tight, efficient motions, refusing to chase, refusing to waste energy. He kept the center. He made Oberyn Martell work for every angle. Tyrion Lannister's mouth went dry. He watched his father's feet, how Tywin Lannister kept them under him, how he did not overstep, how he moved like a man who had spent his life making sure the ground never shifted. Tyrion Lannister had never seen his father fight. He had seen him win wars with letters and gold and calculated cruelty. Seeing him here, in sand with sweat beginning to darken the collar of his armor, felt like peering into a room in the Red Keep that had been locked his whole life. Oberyn Martell's spear snapped out again, this time low, aimed at the back of Tywin Lannister's knee. Tywin Lannister anticipated it, turned his leg, and the spear point scraped along a plate, throwing sparks. Oberyn Martell's shield lifted, catching a sudden slash. The clang rang out like a bell struck hard. The gods are watching, Tyrion Lannister thought wildly, and if they have eyes, they are cruel. Oberyn Martell retreated 2 steps, then surged forward in a blur, spear thrusting high toward Tywin Lannister's throat. Tywin Lannister's shield rose to meet it, but Oberyn Martell twisted his wrists at the last instant, sliding the point around the rim. The spear tip scraped the edge of Tywin Lannister's gorget and left a bright line in the metal. Tywin Lannister's eyes flickered. Anger, or surprise, or something colder. Then his sword came up with savage speed, aimed not at Oberyn Martell's body but at the spear shaft itself. Wood splintered under steel. A crack ran along the ashwood. Oberyn Martell sprang back, breath coming faster. Spear held still but now Ked. Tywin Lannister advanced 1 pace, claiming the moment like territory. His voice carried low. "You are not the first man to hate me," he said. "You will not be the last." Oberyn Martell's smile returned, sharp as his spear point. "No," he agreed, "but I may be the first to make you bleed for it." And then he moved again, circling like a viper in the sand while the lion kept the center, and the morning air held its breath. The spear's crack was a whisper of mortality. Oberyn Martell felt it in his hands, a subtle shift in balance, a faint vibration where the ashwood had begun to fail. He did not look down. Looking down was an invitation to die. He let his fingers adjust by instinct, sliding to find a stronger grip, and kept his eyes on Tywin Lannister's shoulders. Tywin Lannister's sword had not struck wildly. It had struck with the precision of a man aiming to remove his enemy's teeth. A broken spear was not merely a broken weapon, it was a broken advantage. In Tywin Lannister's mind, Oberyn Martell could almost see the sums being done. Distance reduced, risk increased, outcome improved. Tywin Lannister advanced, shield leading, as if he intended to drive Oberyn Martell backward until the sand ran out and the wall finished what steel began. The crowd tasted it too. Their murmurs rose, nervous and hungry, like flies around meat. Oberyn Martell angled away, letting Tywin Lannister follow, refusing to give him the straight line he wanted. He darted in and out, spear tip snapping toward Tywin Lannister's wrists and ankles. Tywin Lannister blocked and parried, enduring the sting of near misses with cold patience. He was forcing Oberyn Martell to spend energy. He was forcing him to move. A slash came low, quick, aimed at Oberyn Martell's calf. Oberyn Martell leapt back, but the sword tip caught leather and sliced shallow. Warm blood ran down his boot. It was nothing, a scratch, but scratches became stories if you let them. The crowd made a sound of approval. Cersei Lannister's face twisted, something like joy breaking through grief. Tyrion Lannister felt a strange, sick echo of it in himself. The inherited reflex to cheer when House Lannister wounded an enemy. He hated himself for it even as it rose. Jaime Lannister's mouth tightened. His eyes remained fixed on Tywin Lannister, and Tyrion Lannister wondered what his brother was seeing. A father, a general, a man who had built the world Jaime Lannister lived in and then demanded gratitude for the walls. Oberyn Martell shifted his weight, letting the cut on his calf be paid for in the next breath. His spear shot out toward Tywin Lannister's shield rim, not to strike flesh but to hook. The point caught the edge, and Oberyn Martell yanked, trying to pull Tywin Lannister's guard open. Tywin Lannister resisted with brute strength and a soldier's stance. His shield held. His sword came down hard on the spear shaft again, seeking the crack. Wood splintered further. The spear threatened to snap. Oberyn Martell twisted away and withdrew, letting the blade bite only air. He circled, breath measured, refusing to let urgency make him sloppy. He had nearly died yesterday for a moment's sloppiness. He would not repeat that gift. Tywin Lannister moved with him, always keeping the center, always keeping his shield between Oberyn Martell and his vulnerable places. His face was expressionless beneath his helm, but his eyes were cold, alive. He was not enjoying this. He was enduring it. That endurance was its own threat. "You wanted a confession," Tywin Lannister said suddenly, voice carrying over the hush. "From a brute, from a dead man. Is that all Dorne has left? Begging words from monsters?" Oberyn Martell's spear tip hovered at Tywin Lannister's chest, a finger pointing at a heart. "Dorne has memory," Oberyn Martell replied, "and it has patience. You have relied on both being short." Tywin Lannister's sword flicked out, fast, cutting at Oberyn Martell's hands. Oberyn Martell jerked his grip away. Steel scraped the spear shaft and sent a jolt up his arm. His fingers tingled. He changed tactics. He could feel Tywin Lannister's rhythm now, the way the older man's feet shifted before a rush, the way his shield dipped a fraction before a cut. Tywin Lannister fought like he ruled. Minimize openings, punish mistakes, never waste. There would be no dramatic flourish to exploit. So Oberyn Martell began to write a slower story, one stroke at a time. He let Tywin Lannister advance, then stepped aside and thrust at the inside of Tywin Lannister's right thigh where armor overlapped. The spear point slipped between plates and bit flesh. Not deep. Deep wasn't required. Tywin Lannister hissed sharply and retreated half a step, his first retreat. Blood darkened the seam of his armor. The crowd inhaled. Someone shouted, a raw, disbelieving sound. The Dornish guards at the gate did not move, but Elia Sand's hand lifted to her mouth, eyes shining. Cersei Lannister made a sound between a sob and a snarl. "No," she whispered, not loud enough for the court but loud enough for Tyrion Lannister to hear. Her nails dug into the wood of the chair beside Tommen Baratheon. Tywin Lannister's eyes narrowed. He did not look at the blood. He did not check the wound. He simply adjusted his stance and came on again, refusing to let pain become a lesson anyone could read. Oberyn Martell backed away, spear held steady, but Tyrion Lannister saw the split in the shaft widening with every impact. He saw the weapon's mortality and felt his own. If the spear broke, Oberyn Martell would be forced close. If Oberyn Martell was forced close, Tywin Lannister's sword would have its chance. Tywin Lannister lunged, shield thrusting hard, aiming to drive Oberyn Martell back and pin him. Oberyn Martell pivoted and let the shield slide past his shoulder, then snapped the spear but up like a club, striking the edge of Tywin Lannister's shield. The blow rang out, jarring Tywin Lannister's arm. Tywin Lannister responded instantly, sword slashing across. The blade took another strip of Oberyn Martell's cloak and cut into the spear shaft again. A loud crack sounded. The spear split further. Oberyn Martell sprang away, eyes flashing, not with fear, but with calculation. He could feel the window closing. So could Tywin Lannister. He advanced, pressing harder, and the morning air thickened with the Serta. Inti that something was about to break. Tywin Lannister's strength was not in his swing. It was in his refusal to be moved. Oberyn Martell tried to force him to chase, to lunge, to commit the way Gregor Clegane had committed. Tywin Lannister would not. He advanced a step at a time, shield always in the right place, sword always ready to punish. He made the duel feel less like a dance and more like a siege, as if Oberyn Martell were a city wall being tested for weakness. The spear's crack grew into a threat. Each time steel struck ashwood, the split widened. Oberyn Martell could feel the shaft flexing in his hands in a way it had not before. It was a serpent's spine breaking. Tywin Lannister saw it. He angled his next blow with intention, sword chopping down toward the cracked section. Not to kill Oberyn Martell, but to leave him toothless. The blade came down with a hard, ugly sound, with groaning, and Oberyn Martell barely managed to twist away. The spear held, but only just. A few more strikes and it would snap. Oberyn Martell's breath came faster now, visible in the morning air. He was not used to being forced. He was used to forcing. Tywin Lannister stepped in again, shield thrusting, and for the first time Oberyn Martell was pushed backward more than he chose. His boots skidded in the sand. The crowd made a startled noise, as if they had seen a god stumble. Cersei Lannister's eyes shone with something fierce. Jaime Lannister's jaw clenched so hard Tyrion Lannister could see the muscle jump. Kevan Lannister's face remained tight, but his gaze flickered, fear, perhaps, not of Oberyn Martell's spear but of what might happen to House Lannister if Tywin Lannister fell. Tyrion Lannister felt that fear too, unwelcome and automatic. like pain from an old wound. Tywin Lannister slashed for Oberyn Martell's shoulder, the blade meant to cut through cloak, muscle, and bone. Oberyn Martell caught it on his small shield, the impact shuddering up his arm. The shield buckled slightly. Tywin Lannister followed with a second cut, faster, aimed at Oberyn Martell's forearm. Steel kissed flesh. Oberyn Martell's arm opened in a bright line. Blood ran down his wrist and dripped onto the sand, darkening it. The crowd roared, delighted by proof that the Viper could bleed. Oberyn Martell's eyes narrowed, and Tyrion Lannister saw the change then. Not in the prince's expression, which remained controlled, but in the tension of his shoulders. Oberyn Martell was angry now. Anger was a blade. Anger was also a trap. Tywin Lannister's voice carried low, almost conversational. "Do you feel it?" he asked, as if discussing the weather. "The world does not care what you want, cares what you can take." Oberyn Martell's smile returned, and it was cold. "I can take your life," he said. Tywin Lannister lunged. It was the first true gamble Tywin Lannister had taken. A sudden surge, shield forward, sword thrusting for Oberyn Martell's belly, aiming to end it in one brutal stroke. Oberyn Martell twisted aside, but not far enough. The sword point grazed his ribs, tearing cloth, scraping skin. Pain flared hot. Oberyn Martell answered with the spear, but snapping it up like a mace. It slammed into Tywin Lannister's shield edge, then slid down and struck Tywin Lannister's knee through the armor seam with all Oberyn Martell's coiled strength. The sound was not loud. It was a dull, ugly crack, like someone snapping a thick branch. Tywin Lannister's leg buckled. His shield dipped. Oberyn Martell did not hesitate. Hesitation was death. He drove the spear tip forward, aiming not for Tywin Lannister's chest but for the gap beneath the arm where the shield no longer covered. The point slid in and drew blood. Tywin Lannister hissed, stumbling sideways. His sword flared up defensively, cutting at the spear shaft again. The blade struck the crack, and the spear snapped. For an instant, time seemed to lurch. The long weapon became two pieces. A short spear in Oberyn Martell's hands and a broken length tumbling into the sand. The crowd gasped. Tywin Lannister's eyes brightened, calculating, seeing the advantage. Oberyn Martell did not freeze. He did not look at the broken wood. He stepped in instead, closing the distance in the one way he had tried to avoid. He turned the shortened spear into something else, a dagger with reach. Tywin Lannister swung, aiming to cut Oberyn Martell down now that the Viper's fangs had been shortened. Oberyn Martell slipped inside the arc, the blade passing close enough to stir the air against his cheek. He drove the broken spear point up toward Tywin Lannister's throat. Tywin Lannister lifted his shield reflexively, but his injured knee made the motion slower. The spear point scraped along the gorget again, found the seam and bit. Tywin Lannister staggered back, blood spilling down his neck into his armor. His breath hitched. The crowd roared, half in horror, half in ecstasy. Cersei Lannister's face contorted, and her voice tore out of her like a scream barely restrained. Jaime Lannister's hand moved at last, his real hand, toward his sword hilt, then stopped, caught between duty and blood. Tywin Lannister's feet faltered in the sand. He tried to set himself again, to bring up his shield to regain the center. Oberyn Martell struck low, fast, the broken spear punching into the already wounded thigh. Tywin Lannister's leg gave. He went down on one knee. And in the morning light, the Lion of Lannister, who had made kings bow and realms bleed, knelt in the sand before a Dornish prince with blood on his hands. Oberyn Martell stood close enough now to hear Tywin Lannister breathe. The sound was controlled, even with blood filling the space beneath armor. Tywin Lannister's eyes lifted to him, and in them Oberyn Martell saw no pleading. He saw only the same cold certainty that had ordered men to kill children and then call it necessity. Oberyn Martell's broken spear point hovered at Tywin Lannister's throat, just above the line where blood ran down like spilled wine. His own arm bled, and the sting of it kept him sharp. Pain was truth. Pain was focus. "Say it," Oberyn Martell whispered, not loud enough for the crowd, but the hush was so complete it might as well have been shouted. Say you gave the order. Say Princess Elia Martell's name. Tywin Lannister's mouth tightened. You want words, he rasped. Words will not bring her back. No, Oberyn Martell said, but they will break the lie you built your house upon. Tywin Lannister's gaze flicked toward the platform for a heartbeat, toward Cersei Lannister's white face, toward King Tommen Baratheon sobbing, toward Jaime Lannister rigid in white armor. Then it returned to Oberyn Martell. You think you have forced justice, Tywin Lannister said, voice low and hoarse. All you have done is teach the realm that anyone can drag old bones into the sun and demand blood. You have opened a door you cannot close. Oberyn Martell's smile was thin, vicious. Good, he said. Let it open. Let every ghost you buried come walking. Tywin Lannister's eyes narrowed. Even kneeling, he tried to make the world smaller by the force of his will. You are a prince, he said. You know how this world works. You know what war costs. If you kill me, if I kill you, Oberyn Martell interrupted. The gods have judged you guilty. His voice rose then, carrying so the crowd could hear, so the platform could hear, so the realm could hear. And the realm will remember. Cersei Lannister's scream ripped through the courtyard. Stop, she shrieked. Tommen. Tell him. Tommen. Command it. King Tommen Baratheon sobbed harder, his small body shaking. His mouth opened, but no words came. Only a terrified sound, as if the child's tongue had turned to stone. Jaime Lannister took one step down from the platform before stopping, caught in invisible chains. His hand, his real hand, was clenched so tightly Tyrion Lannister could see the knuckles white. His golden hand hung useless and gleaming, a cruel ornament in a moment when he needed flesh. Kevan Lannister's face went gray. He did not shout. He did not move. He watched as if the world had become something he no longer understood. Tywin Lannister looked up at Oberyn Martell again. If you need a confession, he said, and there was the faintest curl of contempt in his voice, you will die needing it. Oberyn Martell's chest tightened, grief and rage twisting together like snakes. Elia Martell's face rose in his mind, gentle and sad. Her children's small hands, their soft hair, their eyes, like his, dark and bright with life stolen before it could become memory. He wanted Tywin Lannister to say it. He wanted him to admit, to stain his own mouth with the truth. He wanted the world to hear the lion confess. Tywin Lannister would not. Oberyn Martell exhaled slowly. He felt the crowd's hunger, but he did not feed it with words. He fed it with action. He drove the broken spear point into Tywin Lannister's throat. The motion was clean. No flerist, no delay. The spear slid through the gap in armor and found flesh, and Tywin Lannister made a sound. Not a scream, not even a groan, but a startled breath as if the world had surprised him at last. Blood surged, dark and thick. His shield slipped from his hand and fell into the sand with a dull thump. Tywin Lannister's eyes stayed on Oberyn Martell for a heartbeat longer. In them, for the first time, something like uncertainty flickered, small, brief, quickly drowned. Then the light went out. Tywin Lannister toppled forward, face toward the sand, as if even death could not persuade him to fall backward. For a moment the courtyard did not move. Even the crowd seemed stunned into silence by the simple fact of it. The hand of the king dead in the sand, slain by law. Then everything broke. Cersei Lannister's scream became a wail. King Tommen Baratheon cried openly, his hands flailing, his cloak slipping from his shoulders. Lords shouted. Small folk cheered and screamed in the same breath, joy and terror mixing like wine and blood. Gold cloaks tightened their grips on spears, uncertain whether they were guarding a king or a corpse. Jaime Lannister did not move again. He stood frozen in white armor, watching his father's body bleed into the sand, his face empty of everything but shock. Tyrion Lannister felt his knees soften. He did not fall, but the world swayed. His father was dead. His father, who had always seemed carved from stone, immune to consequence, was dead. Oberyn Martell straightened, blood on his hands, blood on his arm, blood on his weapon. He lifted the broken spear point high so all could see it. "The gods have judged," he called, voice ringing through chaos. "Tywin Lannister is guilty." And in that declaration, the realm's spine shifted. The law had done its work, and now men scrambled to decide what the law meant. Kevan Lannister moved first. He stepped down from the platform with a stiffness that was not fear but disbelief turned into motion. He crossed the sand as if wading through water, each stride heavy, and knelt beside Tywin Lannister's body. For a moment he did not touch him, as if contact would make the death real. Then his hand reached out and pressed against Tywin Lannister's shoulder, feeling for warmth that was already leaving. Tywin Lannister's eyes stared blankly at the sand. His mouth was half open, as if he had been about to speak one last command and found, too late, that death did not take orders. Kevan Lannister's throat worked. He bowed his head, not in ceremony, but in something like grief. A Kingsguard moved to help, white cloak stirring. Ser Boros Blunt looked nauseous. Ser Marentrant's face held a hard, uncertain set. They were trained to protect kings, not to collect hand of the king's blood from the sand. On the platform, Cersei Lannister fought like a madwoman. "Let me go!" she shrieked, clawing at Jaime Lannister's arm. "Let me... He killed him, he killed him!" Jaime Lannister held her back with his real hand, his grip iron. His golden hand was useless, a bright mockery at his side. "Cersei," he said, voice low, raw. "Stop! Stop!" she spat. "He murdered our father. It was a trial," Jaime Lannister said, as if forcing the words through his own disbelief. It was poison," Cersei Lannister screamed, eyes blazing as she looked toward Oberyn Martell. "He used poison. He cheated." The accusation flew over the courtyard like an arrow. Some of the crowd hissed, others laughed. The word poison was always seductive in King's Landing. It made every outcome feel like a conspiracy. Oberyn Martell stood in the sand, chest rising and falling, blood running from his cut arm. Elia Sand was at his side now, her hands gripping his forearm, her eyes scanning his wounds with fierce, intimate worry. She pressed her lips briefly to his knuckles, not as a performance for the crowd, but as a private claim. "You are alive." Oberyn Martell looked up at the platform, meeting Cersei Lannister's gaze without blinking. "Does it matter how the gods judge?" he called back, voice calm despite the chaos. "Or only who you wish them to favor?" Cersei Lannister's face twisted, teeth bared. "Arrest him!" she screamed at the gold cloaks. "In the king's name, arrest him!" The gold cloaks hesitated. Their captain, tall, grim, a man whose loyalty was bought rather than bred, looked from the platform to the sand. He looked at Tywin Lannister's corpse, at Kevan Lannister kneeling, at Oberyn Martell standing with a broken spear and blood on his hands. He looked at the crowd pressed against barriers, hungry and volatile. He looked at the Dornish guards at the gate, unmoving, their spears grounded like quiet threats. A wrong move would set the city on fire. Varys Watche, D from the shadow of a pillar, hands folded, face carefully composed. His eyes darted from the gold cloaks to the Tyrells, to Cersei Lannister's fury, to Tommen Baratheon's sobbing. The spider did not move, but Tyrion Lannister could almost see him spinning threads, already calculating what the death meant for the realm's shape. Olenna Tyrell sat still on the platform, her expression unreadable. Only her eyes betrayed her, glittering with a sharp, private satisfaction. Mace Tyrell leaned toward her, whispering urgently, his cheeks flushed. She did not answer him. She watched the sand instead, where a Lannister lay dead and a Martell still stood. King Tommen Baratheon's sobbing turned into something like choking. He clutched at his cloak as if it could protect him from what he had allowed. His face was wet, his small shoulders shook. He was a child forced to witness the cost of crowns. Tyrion Lannister stood below, frozen. He should have felt triumph. He should have felt relief. Tywin Lannister had been the weight on his chest his whole life, the voice that told him he was a mistake, a stain. Now that weight lay in the sand. And yet Tyrion Lannister's body did not celebrate. It trembled, because Tywin Lannister had been more than a father. He had been a pillar holding up the Lannister world. Without him, everything could collapse. Cersei Lannister's fragile rule, Tommen Baratheon's shaky crown, Jaime Lannister's strained honor. And if everything collapsed, Tyrion Lannister would not be spared. He would be crushed with the rest, perhaps first. Oberyn Martell turned slightly, addressing the crowd now, voice carrying over the noise. "This was law," he shouted. "This was judgment." Dorne demanded justice, and justice was granted. Cersei Lannister let out a sound that might have been laughter or a sob. "Justice?" she spat. "You call this justice?" Oberyn Martell's gaze fixed on her. "I call it what you have denied us for years," he said. "I call it truth in the sun." Kevan Lannister rose slowly from Tywin Lannister's body. His face was pale, but his eyes were hard. He turned toward the platform and spoke, voice low but steady, a man forced into leadership by blood. "This trial was granted by the king," Kevan Lannister said. "Its outcome stands." Cersei Lannister stared at him as if he had betrayed her. "Uncle," she hissed. Kevan Lannister did not flinch. His gaze flicked once to Tommen Baratheon, then back to Cersei Lannister. "If you turn this courtyard into a massacre," he said quietly, "you will lose more than you have already lost." Cersei Lannister's breathing came fast, ragged. Jaime Lannister's grip tightened on her arm, and Tyrion Lannister saw something in his brother's face. Fear, perhaps, or exhaustion, or the first crack in the armor of the man Jaime Lannister pretended to be. Oberyn Martell wiped his bleeding hand against his tunic and watched the Lannisters struggle not to devour themselves in public. He did not smile. He simped. Ly waited, because waiting now was a weapon too. Tywin Lannister's blood soaked into the sand, and King's Landing began, in its own twisted way, to understand that the lion could die. When they carried Tywin Lannister away, the courtyard's noise followed like a hungry animal, snapping at heels, refusing to let grief remain private. They laid him in a chamber meant for quiet dignity. Candles burned low. The air smelled of wax and herbs and something metallic that no herb could mask. A crimson cloth covered most of him, but not his face. It seemed wrong to hide Tywin Lannister's face. He had lived by being seen. Cersei Lannister stood over him for a long moment without touching. Her breathing came in sharp pulls. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, as if she could will him back to life through force of hatred. Then she made a sound that broke something in the room and collapsed to her knees beside the table. Her hands gripped the edge so hard her knuckles whitened. She leaned in close, staring at the dark bruise of blood at his throat. "Father," she whispered, and the word held a child's need and a queen's fury tangled together. "Father!" Jaime Lannister stood at the foot of the table, his armor still on, white cloaks pooled behind him. He looked like a statue that had been cracked. His golden hand rested on the table's edge, fingers splayed uselessly. His real hand hung at his side, flexing as if searching for a sword hilt that could cut through the moment. Kevan Lannister stood near the candles, his face drawn. He watched Cersei Lannister with a kind of helplessness. He had always been the man behind Tywin Lannister, the brother who served while Tywin Lannister commanded. Now there was no one to stand behind. Qyburn waited in shadow, hands folded, eyes calm in a way that felt obscene in a room with a corpse. He had been summoned not for comfort but for utility. Cersei Lannister did not keep men like Qyburn for their sympathy. Cersei Lannister lifted her head, eyes burning. "They will pay," she said, voice low and shaking. "They will all pay. Oberyn Martell, Doran Martell, every snake in that cursed desert." Kevan Lannister spoke softly. "Cersei," he said, "this is not the time." Cersei Lannister's gaze snapped to him. "Do not tell me about time," she hissed. "Time is what killed him. Time is what—" Her voice broke, then hardened again. "Where is Tyrion?" The name landed like poison. Jaime Lannister's jaw tightened. "Not here," he said. Cersei Lannister's lips curled. "Of course not," she spat. "The dwarf scuttles away when the room stinks of blood. He will be laughing somewhere. He wanted this." Jaime Lannister took a step forward. "He did not," he said, and his voice held a crack in it. This was Oberyn Martell." Cersei Lannister's laugh was sharp, hysterical. "Oberyn Martell is a weapon," she said. "Weapons are pointed. Who pointed him? Who gave him the excuse? Tyrion did. The moment he chose that Dornishman as champion, he signed father's death warrant." Jaime Lannister's eyes flicked to Tywin Lannister's face. Tyrion Lannister had chosen Oberyn Martell because he had no one else. Jaime Lannister had feared once, but circumstances had twisted, as they always did. Jaime Lannister had not stood in that sand. He had stood on the platform and watched his father kneel and die. His throat tightened. "You cannot blame Tyrion for everything," he said, but the words sounded weak, even to him. Cersei Lannister surged up from her knees, face twisted. "I can blame him for being born," she snarled. "I can blame him for mother dying. I can blame him for every shame father swallowed because of him. And I can blame him for this." She swept a hand toward the corpse, as if presenting evidence. Kevan Lannister's voice remained steady, though grief pressed at it. "If you make this about Tyrion Lannister," he said quietly, "you will miss what matters." Cersei Lannister whirled on him. "What matters is that my father is dead," she shouted. Kevan Lannister's eyes hardened. "Yes," he said, "and what matters is that the realm saw it. The realm saw Tywin Lannister die by law. You cannot undo that with screams. You cannot undo it with a knife in the dark without turning Oberyn Martell into a martyr and Dorne into an enemy you cannot afford." Cersei Lannister's breathing came fast. "I can afford anything," she hissed. "I am the Queen Mother." Kevan Lannister's eyes hardened. "You are the Queen Mother to a boy king," he replied. "And the city is full of hungry men who will take advantage of your grief. If you give them chaos, they will feed on it." Cersei Lannister's gaze flicked to Tywin Lannister's face again, as if seeing her own future there. Cold, still, powerless. Her hands trembled. Qyburn stepped forward slightly, voice gentle. "There are ways," he murmured, as if offering a salve. "Ways to make you feel safer." Cersei Lannister's eyes slid to him, sharp. "Safer," she repeated. Qyburn nodded. "A presence," he said. "A guardian. Someone who does not tire. Someone who does not fear swords or poison." Jaime Lannister's face tightened. He knew too well what Qyburn meant. He had seen the blackened armor piece on Cersei Lannister's table the night before. He had heard whispers of Qyburn's interest in Gregor Clegane's corpse. Cersei Lannister's gaze narrowed, hungry for any weapon that might restore control. "Do it," she said abruptly. Kevan Lannister frowned. "Do what?" Cersei Lannister's eyes glittered. "Whatever you mean," she said to Qyburn. "Whatever monster you can make it. I want something that can stand between me and the world. I want something that can crush vipers." Qyburn bowed his head slightly. "As you command," he said, serene. Jaime Lannister felt cold settle in his bones. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell Cersei Lannister she was turning into something Tywin Lannister would have despised. He wanted to tell her she was becoming the kind of ruler who thought fear was the same as strength. Instead, he stood beside his father's corpse and said nothing. Cersei Lannister leaned over Tywin Lannister again, pressing her forehead briefly to the cloth as if kissing a relic. When she lifted her face, it was set in lines that did not belong to grief alone. "They will kneel," she whispered. "They will all kneel, or they will die." Tywin Lannister lay silent beneath her vow, and the candles flickered as if the chamber itself found the promise too dangerous to hold. The small council met because the realm could not afford to wait for grief to finish speaking. Tywin Lannister's chair at the head of the table remained empty, and the emptiness had a weight the room could not ignore. Kevan Lannister stood behind it instead, hands braced on the table's edge. Beside him lay the hand's chain, its gold links coiled like a dead serpent. Cersei Lannister sat stiffly, eyes raw. She had changed gowns, changed jewels, changed the mask on her face, but nothing could change the fact that the room now looked at her differently. Without Tywin Lannister, her power was louder, less certain. Men could smell that. Mace Tyrell did not bother to hide his excitement behind mourning. He leaned forward, cheeks flushed, voice booming. "The hand of the king is dead," he declared, as if announcing a festival. "We must name a new hand at once. Someone of experience. Someone with armies. Someone with a rose pinned to his chest." Olenna Tyrell finished dryly, and the room rippled with uncomfortable laughter. She sat at her leisure, hands folded, eyes sharp. "Spare us the sermon, Mace Tyrell. We all know you want the chain. You've wanted it since the day you first realized you could buy your way into the capital." Mace Tyrell reddened. "Mother!" Olenna Tyrell waved him off. "Sit down before you embarrass yourself further," she said. Mace Tyrell did not sit, but his voice lowered. Grand Maester Pycelle shuffled papers like a man searching for a precedent that could reattach a severed head. "The law is quite clear," he quavered. "The king may name." "The king is 8, Cersei Lannister snapped, "and he will name what I tell him to name." Kevan Lannister's jaw tightened, but he did not contradict her yet. He was not here to win an argument. He was here to prevent collapse. Varys spoke softly, as if offering honey. "The realm will look for stability," he said. "A familiar hand." Cersei Lannister's eyes cut toward him. "And you," she hissed, "you will whisper whatever serves you." Varys' smile remained gentle. "I whisper what serves the realm," he replied, which was not an answer so much as a refined evasion. The door opened. Oberyn Martell entered as if he had every right. His arm was bandaged. Faint bloodstains marked his sleeve. His expression was calm, but his eyes glittered with the kind of alertness that came from having survived what men in this city rarely survived. Victory over a Lannister in daylight. Ellaria Sand followed, her gaze sweeping the room, taking in each face, measuring threat. Behind her, the door remained open just enough for the council to see Dornish guards waiting outside. Polite, silent reminders. Jaime Lannister stood near the doorway in his white armor, face drawn. He did not look at Oberyn Martell. He stared at the floor as if it held something he could not bear to see. Cersei Lannister's hands clenched. "Get out," she said before anyone could speak. "You have done enough." Oberyn Martell's smile was small. "I came to hear the crown's response," he said. "Justice was granted in the yard. Will the crown honor it in this room?" Mace Tyrell puffed up again. "The crown honors." Olenna Tyrell's gaze cut him to silence. Kevan Lannister spoke at last, voice steady. "Prince Oberyn," he said, and the title sounded strange now, no longer a guest title but a political fact. "The trial's outcome stands. Tywin Lannister is dead. The gods have judged." Oberyn Martell's eyes flicked to the hand's chain on the table. "The gods have judged Tywin Lannister guilty," he corrected. "Do not soften it with mourning." Cersei Lannister surged forward in her chair, eyes blazing. "Guilty?" she spat. "My father did not." "Your father sent men into King's Landing with blood on their hands," Oberyn Martell said, voice calm and cutting. "Your father rewarded the men who murdered children. Your father built his power on the bodies of innocents. If you wish to argue, Queen Mother, do it with the gods. They have already answered." Grand Maester Pycelle made a distressed noise. Now. Oberyn Martell turned his gaze on him. "Do not now me," he said softly. "You were here when Robert Baratheon laughed at my sister's death. You were here when the court decided Dorne's grief was inconvenient. You have had years to speak. You chose silence." Pycelle wilted under the stare, lips trembling. Kevan Lannister lifted a hand slightly, a gesture of control that carried some of Tywin Lannister's old authority. "What do you demand?" he asked. Oberyn Martell did not hesitate. "Acknowledgement," he said, "publicly. The Crown must declare that Tywin Lannister was judged guilty in lawful combat for the crimes committed against House Martell during the sack of King's Landing. The Crown must offer reparations, not gold alone, but honor. A place for Dorne on this council with real voice, not courtesy. And safe passage for myself and my companions, unmolested. Cersei Lannister's laughter was bitter. "You want a seat at this table?" she sneered. "After killing my father? I want what Tywin Lannister offered to buy Dorne's silence," Oberyn Martell replied. "Except now the price has changed." Mace Tyrell's eyes narrowed. "A seat for Dorne is one thing," he said cautiously, "but publicly declaring Lord Tywin guilty will stain your alliance," Olenna Tyrell said with an almost pleased sharpness. "Yes, dear, that is rather the point," Mace Tyrell sputtered. "Mother!" Olenna Tyrell looked at Kevan Lannister. "Better a stain than a war," she said. "If Cersei Lannister starts screaming about vengeance and trying to arrest Dornish princes, Dorne will react. And then where will your boy king be? Cowering behind a child's crown while the realm bleeds again." Cersei Lannister's face went rigid. "Do not speak to me of war," she hissed. "You did not watch your father die." Olenna Tyrell's gaze did not soften. "I have watched people die," she replied. "More than you can see. The difference is I do not demand the realm die with them." Kevan Lannister's eyes closed briefly, as if pain pressed behind them. When he opened them, his gaze settled on Oberyn Martell. "A seat can be arranged," he said slowly. "Master of laws," he added, voice careful. "It was vacant enough. But the public declaration, it must be done," Oberyn Martell said. "If the crown pretends Tywin Lannister died merely defending his honor, then his honor remains intact. That is not justice. That is a lesson to every lord that he can commit atrocities and wash them clean with a duel at the end." Varys's voice drifted in, gentle. "The city will be volatile," he said. "Some will celebrate, some will seethe. A declaration may inflame." Oberyn Martell looked at him. "The city is volatile because men like Tywin Lannister fed it lies until it could no longer digest truth," he said. "Let it burn if it must. Better flames than rot." Kevan Lannister's jaw tightened. He glanced toward the door, where Jaime Lannister stood silent. Then his gaze returned to the table. "We will consider it," he said, which was a councilman's way of saying yes without surrendering the illusion of choice. Cersei Lannister's hands trembled on the armrests. "I will not allow him on the council," she said. "Not while I—" Kevan Lannister cut her off, voice suddenly harder. "You will allow what keeps Tommen Baratheon alive," he said, "or you will bury more than your father." The room fell into a stunned quiet. Cersei Lannister stared at him as if she had never seen Kevan Lannister's spine before. Oberyn Martell's smile flickered. "Good," he murmured. "The lion has other teeth after all." Kevan Lannister's face remained tight. "Do not mistake necessity for friendship," he said. "I do not," Oberyn Martell replied. "I mistake it for opportunity." And in that word, the council felt the shift. The realm's balance changing, the table's edges becoming sharper. Tyrion Lannister tried to find a corner of the Red Keep where the air did not smell like blood. But the castle had been built on violence. Every stone carried its own memory. He walked without destination, feet carrying him through corridors he had known since childhood. The banners hung the same, the torches flickered the same, and yet everything felt altered, as if the castle itself had shifted slightly when Tywin Lannister's body hit the sand. A part of Tyrion Lannister kept expecting to hear his father's footsteps behind him, the measured stride, the faint jingle of chain links, the sound of authority approaching. He had lived under that sound so long it had become the rhythm of his fear. Now the fear had no rhythm. Sprawled. He rounded a corner and stopped. Jaime Lannister stood there, blocking the corridor with his body and his silence. He had removed his helm. His hair was loose, golden strands falling against his cheek. His face looked older than it had yesterday, as if grief had carved a year into him in a single morning. The white of his armor seemed too bright in the torchlight, a purity that no longer fit. For a long moment, neither brother spoke. They stared at each other across the narrow stone passage, both suddenly children again in the shadow of a father who had never allowed softness. Tyrion Lannister swallowed. "I suppose I should offer condolences," he said finally, and the attempt at wit came out sharp and wrong. Jaime Lannister's jaw flexed. "Do not," he said, voice low. Tyrion Lannister's eyes flicked over him, noticing the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand, his real one, rested near his sword as if reflex demanded it even when no threat stood before him. "You watched," Tyrion Lannister said. "All of us watched." Jaime Lannister's gaze dropped for a heartbeat, then lifted again. "He looked at me," he said quietly, "before he died." Tyrion Lannister felt something twist in his chest. Unexpected. "What did he look like?" he asked before he could stop himself. Jaime Lannister's mouth tightened. "Like Tywin Lannister," he said, as if he was still deciding what everyone else should do. Tyrion Lannister let out a breath that might have been laughter. "Even in death," he murmured. Jaime Lannister's eyes snapped to him. "Do not make this into a joke," he said, and there was anger there now, hot and raw. "Not today." Tyrion Lannister's smile faded. "I am not joking," he said quietly. "I do not know what I am." Jaime Lannister studied him, and for the first time Tyrion Lannister saw fear in his brother's eyes. Not fear of a sword, but fear of what came next. "Cersei Lannister will blame you," Jaime Lannister said bluntly. Tyrion Lannister's mouth twisted. "Cersei Lannister blames me when it rains," he replied. "She blamed me when Mother died. She blamed me when Joffrey Baratheon choked. She blamed me when Father frowned. Why should she stop now? Because she needs something to hate," Jaime Lannister said, voice tight. "And now she has lost the one person who could tell her no." Tyrion Lannister felt the castle's chill creep into his bones. "Kevan Lannister told her no," he said, thinking of his uncle's hard voice in the council chamber, the brief flare of authority. "At least once." Jaime Lannister's mouth tightened. "Kevan Lannister is not Tywin Lannister," he said. "He will try to hold the realm together. Cersei Lannister will try to tear it apart to prove she still has claws." Tyrion Lannister's hands flexed inside his sleeves, fingers rubbing over the raw marks where chains had been yesterday. "And Oberyn Martell?" he asked. Jaime Lannister's eyes flicked, involuntary, toward the direction of the council chamber. "Oberyn Martell will take what he can," he said. "He killed my father and did it with a straight face. He will not go home satisfied. He will go home powerful." Tyrion Lannister thought of Oberyn Martell's calm voice over the sand, declaring guilt as if the gods were his witnesses. He thought of the broken spear in the prince's hand and how easily it had become a killing tool. "He saved my life," Tyrion Lannister said. "He did what no one else would do." Jaime Lannister's gaze hardened. "And he did it because it served him," he said. "Everything serves someone," Tyrion Lannister replied. "Even you standing here." Jaime Lannister flinched slightly, as if struck. His mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, he looked like a man who wanted to confess something he did not have the courage to name. Instead, he leaned closer, voice dropping. "Listen to me," he said. "You cannot stay here." Tyrion Lannister's breath caught. "I was acquitted," he whispered. "By law, by gods, by a duel that killed our father," Jaime Lannister snapped, then lowered his voice again, forcing control. "You were acquitted, yes, but law does not protect you from Cersei Lannister. It never has." Tyrion Lannister stared at him, bitterness rising. "Are you offering to help me run?" he asked softly. "Because last time I needed you, you chose her." Jaime Lannister's face tightened. "I chose family," he said. You chose Cersei Lannister," Tyrion Lannister corrected. Jaime Lannister's jaw clenched, and for a moment Tyrion Lannister saw something crack. A flash of shame, perhaps, or anger at himself. "I am choosing you now," Jaime Lannister said, and the words sounded like they hurt. Tyrion Lannister's throat tightened. He wanted to laugh. He wanted to spit. He wanted to lean into his brother's offered hand like a starving man offered bread. Instead, he stood still, caught between old wounds and new fear. In the background, a soft movement near an archway drew his eye. Varys stood half-hidden, watching with the mild expression of a man observing weather. His gaze met Tyrion Lannister's for a heartbeat, and in that look was an offer. "You are not invisible to me." Farther down the corridor, Oberyn Martell passed with Elia Sand and Dornish guards, walking with the relaxed confidence of someone who had just changed the world. Oberyn Martell's eyes flicked briefly toward the Lannister brothers, then moved on. There was no pity in that glance, only calculation, as if he were already deciding where each piece belonged on the board. Tyrion Lannister felt the walls closing in. "Where would I go?" he asked Jaime Lannister quietly. Jaime Lannister's gaze held his. "Anywhere," he said. "Anywhere but here." And Tyrion Lannister realized, with a cold clarity, that acquittal was not freedom. It was merely a different kind of cage, with the bars still wearing a lion's face. In the Red Keep's gardens, the air felt cleaner, but it was still King's Landing air, heavy with smoke and secrets. Oberyn Martell stood beside a small fountain where water trickled over stone worn smooth by years of royal hands. He watched the surface ripple and thought, briefly, of Sunspear's sunlit pools, of water warm enough to cradle skin. Here the water looked cold. Here everything felt as if it had been polished by fear. In his hand he held a letter sealed in red wax, stamped with the sun and spear. The seal was still soft enough to bear the faint imprint of his ring's edge. He had written to Doran Martell with a steadier hand than he had expected. He had not written poetry. He had written facts, because facts were the sharpest blades in politics. Gregor Clegane dead, confession secured. Tywin Lannister accused, trial granted. Tywin Lannister killed by law. He had written that the realm center had cracked. Elia Sand lingered a few paces behind him, watching the hedges and the archways, listening for footsteps that did not belong. She wore a simple gown now, dark and unadorned, as if refusing to celebrate while blood was still wet in the castle. Her eyes never stopped moving. Varys approached as though he had always been part of the garden, sprouting quietly from shadow. His soft slippers made almost no sound on the stone path. He stopped at a respectful distance and bowed slightly. "Prince Oberyn," Varys said, voice smooth as oil, "you have made the city lively." Oberyn Martell's mouth curved. "The city is always lively," he replied. "It simply lies about what excites it." Varys smiled faintly. "And now it cannot lie," he said. Oberyn Martell held up the letter, letting the seal catch what little light remained. "It can always lie," he said, "but lies require a story strong enough to hold them. Tywin Lannister was that story. Without him, Varys finished softly, "the realm seems show." Oberyn Martell's gaze rested on Varys, sharp. "You sound pleased," he observed. Varys placed a hand on his chest as if wounded. "Pleased?" he echoed. "Never. Concerned, always. When great men fall, small men rush to fill the space. Small men are dangerous." Oberyn Martell's smile sharpened. "Then you should be terrified," he said, "because there are many small men in King's Landing, and at least one very small lion." Varys's eyes flickered with amusement. "King Tommen Baratheon is a sweet boy," he said. "He does not deserve this." "None of us deserve what we get," Oberyn Martell replied. "That is the point." Varys's gaze drifted toward the raven cage nearby, where dark wings rustled. "You will send that letter," he said. "Yes." "To Prince Doran Martell?" "Yes." Varys tilted his head slightly. "And what will you tell him?" he asked, voice low. "That you have taken vengeance? That the debt is paid? That you will come home?" Oberyn Martell's eyes narrowed. "I will tell him the truth," he said. "The lion is bleeding. The roses smell opportunity. And the boy king is terrified." Varys nodded slowly, as if listening to a familiar song. "A frightened king is a dangerous thing," he murmured. "He clings to whoever promises safety. Today, that may be Kevan Lannister. Tomorrow, Oberyn Martell interrupted. "Maybe me." Varys's smile widened slightly. "Perhaps," he said, "a Dornish prince on the small council. It would be unprecedented." "Unprecedented is merely what men call justice when they have avoided it too long," Oberyn Martell replied. Varys's eyes gleamed. "And what of Tyrion Lannister?" he asked gently. "He is alive because of you. He is also alive in a city where his sister's grief has turned to rage." Oberyn Martell's gaze held steady. "Tyrion Lannister is useful," he said simply. Elia Sand's posture tightened slightly at the word, and Oberyn Martell felt it without turning. Useful was a cruel word if spoken carelessly, but he did not soften it. Politics was built out of cruel truths. Varys nodded, as if satisfied by honesty. "He is," he agreed, "and he is also in danger." "Everyone is in danger," Oberyn Martell replied. "This is King's Landing." Varys stepped a fraction closer, lowering his voice further. "There are ships," he said softly. "There are roads. There are doors in this castle that lead to places most people do not know exist. If Tyrion Lannister wishes to live, he may need one of those doors." Oberyn Martell's eyes narrowed. "And you would open it," he said, not a question. Varys's smile remained gentle, but there was steel beneath it. "I open doors that serve the realm," he said. "Sometimes the realm is served by a man who understands its ugliness." Oberyn Martell studied him, weighing. Varys was a man who survived by being underestimated, by wearing softness like armor. Oberyn Martell had met such men before in foreign courts. Men who smiled while sharpening knives. "You want him gone," Oberyn Martell said. "I want him alive," Varys corrected. "Preferably far from Cersei Lannister." Oberyn Martell considered. Tyrion Lannister alive in King's Landing was a spark tossed into dry hay. He could ignite the Lannisters from within. He could also be snuffed quietly in some corridor, and the only sound would be a woman's satisfied breath. Oberyn Martell lifted the sealed letter slightly. "First, this goes to Dorne," he said. "Doran Martell must know what I have done." "And what will Doran Martell say?" Varys asked softly. "He is known for patience." Oberyn Martell's smile turned almost tender. "He will say I am a fool," he replied, "and then he will begin counting what my foolishness has bought him." Varys's eyes glittered. "Then we are all counting now," he murmured. Oberyn Martell turned toward the raven cage, and the bird inside flapped its wings, sensing movement. Oberyn Martell slipped the letter through the bars to the keeper. The seal caught light one last time before disappearing into feather and shadow. And he turned back. Varys was already drifting away, leaving only the faint scent of perfume and the feeling of threads tightening around the realm's throat. Elia Sand stepped closer. "Do you trust him?" she asked quietly. Oberyn Martell's eyes remained on the path where Varys had vanished. "No," he said, "but trust is not required. Only alignment." Elia Sand's gaze flicked toward the raven cage. "And Doran Martell?" she asked. Oberyn Martell's mouth softened briefly at his brother's name. "Doran Martell will be angry," he said. "He will be afraid, and he will understand." He looked up at the Red Keep's walls, pale stone catching the last light, and thought of how easily stone could crack if struck in the right place. He had struck the realm in its heart. Now he would see what grew from the wound. In Sunspear, the light was different. It did not glare like King's Landing's harsh sun. It lay over stone like warm cloth, turning walls the color of honey and sand. The air smelled of salt and citrus, and the sea's presence could be felt even when it could not be seen, a steady breath beyond the arches. Prince Doran Martell sat in a shaded chamber where mosaics glittered on the floor, tiny shards arranged into a sunburst that seemed to pulse with quiet heat. His legs were swaddled in cloth, his feet elevated on cushions, and pain sat in him like an old companion. Gout was a cruel illness. stole motion, forced patience. In Oberyn Martell, it had found a mind already inclined toward waiting. A servant entered with careful steps and bowed. Behind him came the raven handler, holding a small bundle as if it were a jewel. A letter. The seal caught Oberyn Martell's eye before the handler reached him. The sun and spear, pressed in red wax. Oberyn's seal. Oberyn Martell's face did not change, but something tightened around his eyes, a quiet dread that had lived there for years. Oberyn Martell's letters rarely carried good news. They carried motion. Elia Martell stood near the archway, arms crossed loosely, watching with the restless energy of a woman who felt caged by her father's patience. Her dark hair fell in waves over her shoulders. Her gaze sharpened on the seal. "At last," she murmured. Oberyn Martell did not answer. He extended a hand, fingers slender, and took the letter. The wax was cool under his thumb. He broke the seal carefully, as if being gentle might soften whatever waited inside. He unfolded the parchment. For a moment, there was only the sound of the sea in the distance and the faint splash of fountains beyond the arches. The chamber's air felt suddenly thick, as if it were holding its own breath. Oberyn Martell's eyes moved over the lines. His mouth tightened. His gaze stilled on certain words longer than others. Elia Martell took a step forward, impatience itching under her skin. "Well?" she demanded. "What has he done?" Oberyn Martell's hand clenched slightly on the paper. He read again the lines that mattered, as if repetition might turn them into something else. Gregor Clegane dead. Confession secured. Tywin Lannister accused. Trial by combat granted. Tywin Lannister slain by law. Tywin Lannister judged guilty. Elia Martell's breath caught. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, as shock hardened into something like fierce satisfaction. "He killed Tywin Lannister," she whispered, as if speaking the words aloud might call down lightning. Oberyn Martell lowered the parchment slowly. His face remained composed, but his eyes were darker now, heavy with old grief and new fear. "Yes," he said quietly. "He did." Elia Martell's lips curved. "Then the debt is paid," she said. "Then the lions will bleed as we have bled." "The debt is never simply paid," Oberyn Martell replied, voice soft but firm. "It is collected, and collection has consequences." Elia Martell's eyes flashed. "Consequences?" she repeated. "Father, Tywin Lannister ordered Elia Martell's death." He is dead," Oberyn Martell said, and the words carried a strange weight. He had wanted Tywin Lannister dead for years, in the secret place where grief hid when politics demanded silence. He had wanted it so intensely that he had built plans around it like scaffolding. And now the scaffolding had been set on fire. Elia Martell stepped closer, voice urgent. "This is opportunity," she said. "The realm will shake. The Lannisters will tear at each other. We can be pulled into their collapse," Oberyn Martell finished. He looked at his daughter, and in his gaze was a tenderness edged with warning. "Oberyn Martell has always been brave," he said softly, "and bravery is often another word for reckless." Elia Martell's jaw tightened. "He is the only one who has acted," she snapped. "You have waited and waited, and Elia Martell's bones have waited with you." Oberyn Martell's eyes flicked briefly toward the archway, beyond which the water gardens shimmered in sun. The fountains sang. Orange trees cast dappled shade. Laughter drifted faintly. Children's laughter, soft, innocent. In the distance, Myrcella Baratheon walked along a mosaic path with Tywin Martell at her side. She wore a pale dress suited to Dornish heat, her golden hair braided. Tywin Martell spoke to her, and she smiled, unaware that in King's Landing a lion had died and the world had shifted beneath her feet. Oberyn Martell watched her for a moment, and the softness in his face deepened into something almost painful. "Myrcella Baratheon is here," he said quietly. "A child, a hostage in all but name." Oberyn Martell threatened her safety to force a king's hand. Elia Martell's gaze flicked to Myrcella Baratheon, then away, uncomfortable. "He would not hurt her," she said. Oberyn Martell's mouth tightened. "He might not," he said, "but men in King's Landing will believe we might. That belief is enough to start wars." Oberyn Martell's hands clenched. "Then let them fear," she hissed. "Let them taste what it is to be powerless." Oberyn Martell lowered his gaze to the letter again. Oberyn Martell's handwriting was bold, impatient, alive. Oberyn Martell could almost hear his brother's voice behind the words. Laughing, daring, refusing to accept the world as it was. "I loved Elia Martell," Oberyn Martell said softly, and the chamber seemed to still around the name. "I loved her as a brother should. I failed her when I let the realm bury her truth under convenience." Oberyn Martell's eyes softened briefly at that, then hardened again. "Then do not fail her now," she said. Oberyn Martell looked up, gaze steady. "I will not," he said, "but I will not trade one sister's death for 1,000 more." He folded the letter carefully and set it on his lap. His fingers rested on the broken seal. He could feel the pressure of it like a thumbprint of Oberyn Martell's will. "My brother has made a move," Oberyn Martell said, voice quiet and precise. "Now the board changes. The Tyrells will reach. Cersei Lannister will lash out. Kevan Lannister will try to hold what Tywin Lannister built. And somewhere, the whispers will grow louder." Oberyn Martell leaned in, eyes bright. "So what do we do?" she demanded. Oberyn Martell looked again toward the water gardens, toward Myrcella Baratheon smiling in sunlight, and felt the old tension in his chest tighten. Love versus vengeance, patience versus fire. "We do what we always should have done," Oberyn Martell said softly. "We protect our own. We choose our timing. And we remember that the lions are wounded, but wounded beasts bite hardest." Oberyn Martell's gaze burned. "And Oberyn Martell?" she asked. "Will you call him home?" Oberyn Martell's eyes closed briefly. He saw Oberyn Martell in his mind as he had been as a boy, wild, laughing, full of heat. He saw him as a man, returning from foreign cities with stories and scars, refusing to be tamed. He saw him now in King's Landing sand, blood on his hands, standing over Tywin Lannister's corpse. "I will send word," Oberyn Martell said at last. "Not to scold him, not to praise him, to guide him." Oberyn Martell's mouth tightened. "He does not like guidance," she muttered. Oberyn Martell's gaze settled on her, and the look held a quiet sadness. "No," he agreed, "but perhaps now he will understand that even vipers need a nest." Outside, the fountains continued to sing. Myrcella Baratheon laughed at something Tristan Martell said, her smile bright and unshadowed. In the chamber, Oberyn Martell held his brother's letter and felt the weight of the realm settling onto Dorne like a storm cloud. Somewhere far away, in a city of smoke and stone, Cersei Lannister would be sharpening knives. In Sunspear, Oberyn Martell began sharpening plans.